All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Maindeck podcast. I'm your host, Dan Green, and today I am joined by a new guest, Dana Mikkelson. How's it going, Dana?
It is going quite well.
Good to hear. Dana's joining us because today we are doing yet another episode in our December series. The first time we've ever released so many podcasts in 1 month. So I do hope you guys are enjoying all of the content we're releasing. This is episode 4 of a total of 9 episodes, 8 of which are lookbacks. And then we do have one really fun look forward to 2023 episode coming right on New Year's Eve this year. So if you tune in right then, you'll be able to catch it right before the new year starts and maybe start your new year off in style. So, Dana, I'm so happy to have you on today because all of my other usual co-hosts don't really play Magic, or they've been a little too out of it or whatever, or they've been doing other games. And I was really happy to be able to reach out to you and that you were really interested in coming on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much. I was actually kind of flattered. So.
No, of course. Dana, you are in my local area. You're one of the main guys running Magic events right now.
Yes. Yep.
And I think the big place we need to start with this is just go ahead and give the listeners kind of an introduction to who you are and why you're so dang special.
Well, I don't know about special, but I've been playing Magic since I think '94 is when I first got into it. Right in Revised, the Dark. Missed out on Legends and Antiquities for the most of it. Bought a lot of my 79-cent Fallen Empires packs, things like that.
A good set.
Right. Him to Turok.
It had a couple bangers. It did.
But I've been, in and out of the game for, since that time. There's been times where I come back after a year or two, and now it's been. I think I kind of came in, right in. Actually, ran into you at Paradox and with Commander Legends.
Yes.
And
I love this story.
Jumped into that, and you're like, oh yeah, you check these out because they still had collector packs at that time, which $20 a pack was a little bit crazy for me. But I'm like, you're like, well, but yeah, you can get this, and this. I'm like, oh okay, well, let's give it a shot. And I think that very first one, there was a foil vampiric tutor or something like that.
Foil vampiric tutor is what you opened out of the first. I remember that. Yeah. Like you were in for something completely unrelated. I'm not sure what you were after. You had no idea you were going to be walking home, rekindling your love for the hobby.
Right. Yeah. I think I was in for a board game or something, or RPG. So,
yeah. Yeah, you are a true old school player. I mean, like, I don't know, maybe some of the true old school players would be like, no, it's got to be the first 4 sets, which it sounds like you were right after that. But
right.
I consider you a true old school player. That's well before my time. I didn't get in until I started Magic in Apocalypse. Actually, I remember the first new set that was coming out. So but right at the timeline, I started with the good old 7th edition starter set with the Thorn Elemental and everything.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, you're speaking about that. I was just talking to a player the other night. I think it was on Friday, and a friend of his or his cousin of his mom used to work at Barnes and Noble, and she had 7 unopened 7th edition starter sets.
Oh, wow.
That
cool.
She gifted, with Thorn Elemental. I mean, individually, the cards weren't really set up. I mean, there was no organization to them. It's basically just 2 starter decks. And, it's 4th edition, so your value is probably Sylvan Library and Mana Vault. But, I mean, as far as nostalgia, there's some good stuff in there. So.
Yeah, definitely. If I can still picture that, for me, just that 7th edition starter set box, and it came with this little CD that was I remember taking the CD and popping in the computer and be like, I'm going to learn how to play this, and going through their little guided demonstration. And that set had a really weird, a pack that I remember confused everybody because the pack said all over it. It was I think either a white or a silver. I think it might've been a white pack that just says, do not open all over it. I think it was you weren't supposed to open it until you played through the guided game. Or something. You're supposed to pop the CD in and play a guided game without shuffling anything or whatever. And then,
sure.
And then you're supposed to crack that open and you got some honestly just awful garbage, oh, make your deck better. You can put a hill giant in now.
Ooh.
Like, oh, wow, cool. A 2/2 for 3.
Right.
Yeah. Good times. Dana, what other hobbies, so people kind of get a feel for who you are, what other sort of nerd hobbies have you been into in your life?
Well, I have a lot of board games. I play a lot of board games. I've got a ridiculous amount. If I showed my camera around here, I've got like 3. Just to my left over here, I've got a shelf up to the ceiling filled with games. I've got one in the opposite wall and the other opposite wall all the way to the ceiling with games.
Beautiful. Mine's my dining room.
Okay.
We replaced the hutch with a bunch of board games instead. So instead of having like dishes we never use, we have board games I never play.
Right. Yeah, there's. I believe that there are some here that are still in their cellophane.
I honestly wouldn't consider you a true board gamer if that wasn't the case.
All right.
I think that's a requirement.
And it's and I used to be a big Warhammer 40K player.
Yes.
I haven't bought any models for quite some time, but I still have a large amount of unpainted models, a whole bunch of 30K stuff, some old 40K stuff, and I've got probably 60,000 points of painted models. So I got a big display cabinet in the basement that's Space Marines, Adeptus Mechanicus, Death Guard, and I got some Titans. I got 1 Titan and a few Knights. So
first of all, I also wouldn't consider you a true Warhammer player unless you didn't have a bunch of unpainted models. That's a requirement.
Right. It is required. Yeah.
I think, Dana, that's where you and I got to know each other a bit more. I had a stint in 40K for a while too, and
Necrons, if I'm not mistaken.
That was my first army back when before the like update, when the models you got were just, do you want Necron warriors? Because that's what you get. You get Necron warriors and more warriors, and like, it was before the whole like Egyptianizing of the faction.
Oh yeah, the futurized Tomb Kings,
which honestly like really worked for me. I was like incredibly stoked. Like, I liked the initial idea of Necrons, but then when they made them Egyptian, I doubled down. I was like, oh yeah, this is like everything I'm into. So I love that. I still have all those, and then I eventually later on I got into when I stopped for a while and I came back and I got into Thousand Suns, and I
awesome.
Had a lot of fun painting rubrics, even though rubric Marines are just so detailed. It's like so much work you have to do. Gold trimming everything.
Just about all the Chaos Space Marines are all way more decorated than any of like the regular Space Marines.
And all the spikes and stuff everywhere.
Yep, and if you're doing Chaos Undivided, you got Horus Lupercal's eye from the Luna Wolves and skulls. Well, I mean, you got skulls everywhere for everything. So
of course, for the Skull Throne.
Maybe except for Tau. I think they're the only ones that don't have skulls. So.
Well, you could always buy that Games Workshop pack of skulls and just toss them on the base.
I have. I have.
That was always one of my favorite products that they sold. Just a bag full of skulls of various sizes, because they knew that you needed skulls in your life.
Right. I remember there was that little Necron head. You had Tyranid. You had the Tyranid, like warrior skulls and Eldar helmets and all sorts of stuff in there. Yeah, it was pretty cool. It
was actually, I think, seeing some of your paint jobs early on that really inspired me too. That got me like thinking like, man, like this is really impressive stuff. And like, I'm trying to figure out how, because like I could easily word this in a really offensive way, like, well, if Dana can do it, I can do it. But it was like, that's not what I mean.
It's true. No, I mean, as with anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And seeing some of the first models that I did, they're terrible. As a matter of fact, I went back and repainted the entirety of my Space Marines. It was.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And you just start learning techniques, and I worked nights at the time, so I'd sometimes bring my stuff to work in the operations center of the server room and paint in there, much to the dismay of my supervisor, but work got done, and I didn't leave a mess, so it was all good.
Yeah, there you go. You never spilled a bottle of Nuln Oil all over it?
Not in there, in my basement. Oh yeah.
No, definitely. Of course. Once again, You would not be considered a true Warhammer player if you haven't spilled a bottle of Nuln Oil or Devlin Mud or whatever.
Right, especially once they came out with those taller bottles.
Yeah, those are just more knockdown prone. I'm not sure why they did that. That was like the biggest problem with them was you knocked them down. The making them taller, that doesn't help. That makes it easier.
I ended up using either poster putty, or I used to take just a little circle of masking tape and tape them down. So
you just stuck it down. Like, I'm so prone to knocking this bottle over that I literally have to adhere it to my table.
Right.
You know, God forbid we just start to take a little more care around the bottle.
Well, I mean, you get into it, you know, and
Yes.
you're like, oh, I'm going to do that. And then you're like, oh, I got to grab this paint. And then, oh.
You really do, though. Like, I felt like once you kind of got the feel for painting, and by the way, like right away, too, I was also like, I made the absolute, we called this, I'm going to get off topic because this is really funny. I think we called this Necron that I had, Footloose was his name. Okay. And the reason I had a Necron warrior named Footloose was that I had taken my very first Necron warrior that I bought, and everyone can get a feel for my brilliance on my own. Okay, I am surrounded by an incredible support network of people that do an incredible job of masking my inherent stupidity. Okay, if you think anything good about me, it's not just me that's causing it. It's due to that. So, my very first Necron warrior was painted because I thought I would just be able to figure it out. I went to like Michael's or something and I like bought random paint supplies and I'm like,
sure,
this'll work or whatever. And then I just kind of slapped on some, I think it was like a gesso or guess, I don't even know what it's pronounced. Some like really thick gesso. Yeah. But I just there's like a gesso primer and I just like lathered the dude in it. And I'm like, cool. And then I let it dry. And then I like and so at this point, any details are already just covered. And like, and then I took some like random colors. I started putting them on. I'm like, they say it'll look good eventually. So just keep going. And then I like, after a while I sat back and I looked and I thought, I'm a moron. This looks, how did I fail this so badly? Like this looks terrible. So then I went to the sink and I'm like scrubbing him with soap. I'm like, I got to get it all off. And eventually I just scrubbed his foot off. So he lost his foot, but I saved it. It didn't go down the sink. And then I sat everything down and I thought, okay, maybe if I like read a thing online, maybe then I could like figure out what I'm doing. And I went and I read even a single thing, you know, I hadn't read anything. I went and I started reading some stuff and I'm like, okay. So you buy these specific like acrylic paints and you do a primer, you can do a spray primer and boom. I started doing everything. And then after I started working on other warriors, I got to the end and I only had 9 warriors of a 10-man squad. And I'm like, well, all right, Footloose, it's time for you. And I went and I painted him back up and I painted his little foot and I glued his little foot on the base and made it look like he lost his foot in the war. and awesome. That was my first model I painted. I still have him.
Oh, awesome. No, you know, I actually just watched a guy go through and paint a 2,000 point army with craft paints from Michael's or Hobby Lobby.
And I bet he did an incredible job.
Yeah, but I mean, this guy, he went and took all the paints, separated them, thinned them out, had a viscosity cup so he could determine how thick it was. And I mean, yeah, it was pretty ridiculous. Yeah,
you see, you really need to know what you're doing at some point, though, if you're going to go in and get those. Like, that's the really nice thing. That's the brilliant thing about how Games Workshop does this is that so like, yes, everything costs like an exorbitant amount. Like, not gonna argue that 100%. It's a luxury hobby with luxury prices. But the nice thing is that if you have the change, if you can spare it, you can get into that hobby, and all you really have to do is pick up the Games Workshop brand stuff if you want the easy route here. And it's hard to get wrong at that point. They just kind of, everything's at the right viscosity. The paints are good. The sprays work. You just kind of, the glue works, and they have all the tools you need. You just walk in your Warhammer store and be like, I'm getting started. Here's my credit card. Give me the things I need or whatever. Right. And you know, that there is something to be said about just kind of like making that entry to the hobby so much easier, which I think really accounts for why they've been able to do so well in the market for so long.
Well, and even recently, I mean, even recently as 5 years ago or so, even further back when they started with their starter packs, like where you could get a starter army, and they were like $50 to $60. That's how I got the Adeptus Mechanicus. I mean, basically you got I think you got a dune crawler tank and a couple, a couple squads and then one command unit, and it was like $50. And normally just that dune crawler was like $50. So you're like, oh, this is a heck of a deal. And I think I bought like 3 or 4 of them.
Those start collecting boxes, depending on the army, could be just like absolutely a great deal.
Yep.
I know, but I know when they put out the Thousand Suns one, it was like really good. Like in the past few years, I still follow some like Thousand Suns like Facebook groups or whatever, so I see them being posted. But one of the ones that came out in the last probably 3-4 years, maybe something like that, was like a bunch of stuff that you want, and like Zangors, which a lot of people didn't like because they don't like the theme, but and I think they're bad now from what my Facebook feed tells me, but whatever. Right. At the time they were fine. And like some rubrics, of course, the basic Marines for Thousand Suns. And then it came with Ahriman.
Okay, yep.
Which is like, so like, again, start collecting, like, great, you pick up this box, that's good, but then the thing you're saying, like, oh, I'm going to buy 3 or 4, like, the problem is, like, you can't have 3 or 4 named characters named Ahriman. True. It doesn't quite work, so they're a little hit or miss depending. But so when they hit, they're like, sometimes those things just like sell out too. Like Games Workshop only makes so many of them, and then they're gone. So
yeah, that seems to happen a lot, and I see that on certain Facebook groups where there's like, get the start collecting box if you can find it. And then you'll find it, being scalped on eBay for what you'd pay retail for buying all those things separately. So.
Yeah, which is very silly. And around this time of year too, they usually put out their like Battle Force boxes, which I like always wanted to pick up because they're like 3 start collecting boxes in one or more.
Right.
But I never had the cash / the need for like any of the armies they put out while I was playing. But it always seemed like such a sick deal. And like, it's a lot like a Magic Commander deck in that it's just so enticing when you look at the whole thing laid out there and you think of all the fun you'd have like playing that and everything. And then you're like, but it's like $300.
That was a very good transition.
Oh yeah, thank you. thank you. I would want to ask you one question right before we go to the main topic, which is and because this is actually for my own interest, because you did play Magic during what we consider in the TCG space the first sort of golden age of TCGs, which is this era in the sort of late 90s where like Scry magazine had 16 new TCGs in every issue, and they were popping up left and right, and like you played right when it was and all the regular listeners know I'm basically setting this up specifically to make this mention like I try to do every episode, but you played right when Magic was right there with Star Wars CCG.
Oh yeah.
My initial game, Star Trek, and all those ones. So did you ever dabble in other games, Dana?
I did. Spellfire, if you can remember that one.
Spellfire, nice. That's a classic.
The Dungeons and Dragons ones, and actually, when I got introduced to Magic, I also played Vampire.
Oh, of course. Yes, which was also made by Wizards at the time, right?
Yep. And so those were the 2 games that I played and got into initially. And
did you like? So we're gonna take a little quick time machine. So when you were playing those, were there? I think a lot of people would be interested in hearing kind of like, was it similar to how like a shop these days will have tournaments every, one day of the week for like every game or whatever? Were you able to like go to weekly tournaments for those at the time, or was it like more of a casual thing?
So Spellfire was completely casual. I had like 2 friends who played it, and they both lived in the cities. With Vampire, that again was in the cities. Like there was a shop, I think, was it Schindler's in Burnsville is where I played Vampire, like actually in like a league when I was down there. But other than that, the only thing that I usually saw was Magic. That was the like the first game where I saw like a whole bunch of nerds in a room playing a game. Yeah. With organized play. So
Yeah, that's really, it's really interesting to me because that's like, that period of time was like right before. I was just a little too young at the time to really get into them. My first experience playing a CCG was Star Wars CCG was my which anyone who knows that game is like, that was your first CCG, because that game was like pretty obtuse on a few of the rules. But
Sure.
ask me anytime, I will cleanly explain to you how attrition works. I know it by heart in Star Wars
Oh, right on.
CCG. It's what everyone thought was the most complicated mechanic. They're right too. But my first experience was like, I got this like 2-player customizable card game. That's what it's called. The 2-player customizable starter set. For like Christmas, because my parents just bought me like a pile of Star Wars things. I don't know. They went to the store and they're like, if it had Star Wars on it, they just like made a pile of it. And it was, I remember like waking up a Christmas morning and going under my stocking and there's just like a pile of Star Wars things. I'm like, whoa, like, look at all, like, there's like a puzzle and like some, like, I don't know, socks or something or whatever. And then there's like this little 2-player card game starter set. And I was like, what the heck is this? And little did they know what they were starting me on when they gave me that.
Oh, that's awesome.
But then I tried to figure out how to play the game and I didn't get it because I was like, I don't know, 8 or something at the time. Right. Couldn't quite grasp what was going on in this. I remember going to my brother being like, can you, like, holding the attrition page and be like, what is this? And he was like, I don't know. But eventually I met a guy who is a local in our area too, named Andy Dahl, who you probably know.
Yeah, that name definitely sounds familiar. Yeah.
He's gone in and out of all sorts of different hobbies in our area. I met him because he babysat me at one point. Okay. And I don't remember if he was like messing with his cards or I was like messing with mine, but in one way or another we connected and he was like, wait, you have these cards? And I was like, yeah, I do. But I don't understand how to play. And he's like, well, I'll show you, because at the time he was like, I don't know if he's like organizing or just being like a tournament ringer or whatever at the time, but he was like really, really into it.
Sure.
And ended up like showing me how to play and taking me to my first tournament, which was held in a local college, like just like a room that they had for events or something.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like a gymnasium or something. Cause I remember like going there, like playing around and then just like running around on these like rafters or something, because I was like just a kid and I like bored or whatever.
Right.
But and I got like destroyed in the game too, in the matches. But yeah. So like my experience back then during that time was very different than one that I would have now. I wasn't like looking for tournaments or whatever. I was just kind of going with whatever my babysitter said was cool at the time and like, going to that event. So I didn't really start doing looking for tournaments until more like Pokemon had set in, and then it was just like Magic and Pokemon were like the events that you could find.
Yep.
And then it feels like once Magic had kind of set the stage for everything, they really, with the creation of the DCI and everything, they sort of like really showed everyone, here's how you can do a tournament structure.
Right.
And then I think all the other games started like following suit after that.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with you. The original structure they had actually, basically assigning everybody a number, it just made it easy. You just walk in, here's my DCI number, and stores started to have access to the internet, regularly, or they could send it in. Yeah. And so that was a good way to keep track of players. And I remember there used to be a points rating. If you had a certain points rating, you're a pretty good player. Yeah. I never had a good points rating.
No, I don't remember. I don't think I saved my history when they finally closed it down a few years ago. So I don't know what like my final ELO ended up being or whatever. Well, I think they stopped that, but I think that's changed to Planeswalker points before then. So I never even got to, I don't remember what mine was. I don't think it was like particularly high, although I did have a pretty decent run of events like around the Zendikar Shards of Alara era after I came back and like wasn't 9 years old and like, I could like start to actually think about this on a more competitive level.
Yeah. And I know even like when I first started playing Magic, it was like, oh, that's a cool card. I'm throwing it in my deck, and the whole 60 card, the whole 60 card deck thing never came into into the thoughts on casual play. I don't think it wasn't until about Tempest that I think that we really started actually looking at mana curves and and making sure that we had all the cards that we needed.
Really interesting. So like even at a tournament back then, there wasn't because I think we have these, we're sort of fogged up by our just like there's this basic understanding of card games that we all have at this point, which makes it hard to really think about how people would have thought in that era specifically. So like there wasn't this just like optimization happening of your decks. It was just kind of like, oh, if it's a good card, it's a good card.
Yep.
Really? Wow.
Kind of like casual Commander. I mean, that's kind of, that's where Commander kind of takes me back, because it's, other than the singleton format, it's kind of like playing old kitchen table Magic.
Yeah, I think that still depends on the person. Unfortunately, though, there's like, I don't know if unfortunately is the right term here. I have so many mixed thoughts about this. I've been meaning to, I think I've said this in like 6 podcasts at this point too. I've been meaning to put out a video that it kind of talks a little bit about my view on Commander specifically, but I do think that right now there's some interesting, just sort of like we have now this baseline of just like general optimizations that we tend to think about when we're talking about a competitive deck. I think a lot of people who get into Commander very quickly also adopt a set of sort of not necessarily always just optimizations, but things like checking edhrec.com for like, and like, which so like EDHREC is an example of like, I think it's an incredibly useful and interesting resource. And at the same time, I like think people should stop going to it like all the time, like necessarily.
No, I agree. I mean, it kind of makes the meta itself, when someone says I'm running this Commander, then you're going to be familiar with most of the cards that they're running in there, if they're especially a person who goes and checks EDHREC.
Yeah, it's a matter of like, there are definitely optimizations that you can make in Commander, but I think at the end of the day, the optimizations that you make are either, they're in like one of two categories. One category is it's a minor optimization that, because of the 100 card format, like doesn't necessarily affect your like win ratio appreciably.
Right.
And then on the other side of things, there are definitely like combos and consistency tools you can set up that will
absolutely
create a more efficient gameplay engine for you. But I think there's the cost to that is that like you might not necessarily know that you don't want to do that until you've like done it a few times or something. I think there are some players who will at least be with me on that. I like, not necessarily everyone, of course, because there's a lot of like CEDH style players who are just like, I just like, I like the idea of the format playing this specific way. And then, that's where like, I couldn't recommend EDHREC enough, to those players. It's like, it's just going to show you all the like optimal best synergy tools or whatever. But like, I think a lot of players are really better served for what they might be looking for in the format to just like, if they're at like 99 cards and they would need to find one more, like, okay, pop up rec and like, what's a good card that you haven't put in yet? You can do that. But otherwise, like, I think a lot of the time you'll have more fun and you'll actually be surprised at how little it impacts your win ratio, or in fact, it can actually positively impact your win ratio by playing less powerful or more interesting or more niche or just more fun cards.
Oh, agreed. I mean, I definitely take that and understand that. For me, I'm not a combo, super high power player. I do have like one deck that is probably considered it's not quite CEDH, but it would be a power 9 or more, and that's my Yuriko deck.
Sure.
And it's just basically because there's expensive cards in there, and expensive cards are
they're good.
They're good. We got the Mox Diamond and dual, original duels, things like that. So other than the broken Commander Ninjutsu mechanic, which
mechanic is so busted.
because I've got several like 1-drop counter spells where you set, you got to sack a blue permanent to counter a spell, and it's 1 blue. Oh, I'm going to sack my commander so I can ninjutsu her in the next turn.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah, it's that mechanic's so funny because it's like, okay, I love the idea, I love the concept. But it definitely seems to me like one of those scenarios of just because you can doesn't mean you necessarily should have like printed this on a thing. But like it maybe needed just a little bit more like tweaking to make it so it doesn't just always dodge the commander tax, like and everything. It's like,
well, and since then, I mean, you look at like cards like Ragavan, the dash mechanic doesn't dodge commander tax. So
that's true. I've never sat against a monkey player, and I guess maybe that's more of a CEDH thing is why. Like, but I don't know. I guess I never even really thought about a Ragavan commander deck. So yeah, you're totally right. You just keep dashing him in, huh? That's
right.
Well, can you dash him from the command zone?
I believe you can.
It doesn't have to be like in your hand or something.
Right. I think you can dash him from the command zone, and then it doesn't pop back to the command zone. It'll go back to your hand.
Yeah, it just must say you may cast this for its dash cost or whatever. So.
Yep.
That's if that's the case, that's spicy. Some spicy Ragavan tech. I actually just got my first Ragavan a couple weeks ago. Another joint friend of ours, Tim LaRue had
excellent.
We sat down, we played some Commander a couple weeks ago, and had some great games. I showed him the power. We talked about this in a previous podcast. I showed him the power of my mono red Delina Wild Mage deck.
Delina is an awesome card.
She's so fun.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it was the My Hero episode. Mitch that was asking me some questions about my favorite deck, Commander deck right now, and every time I crack that deck open, I have just such a blast. No one really sees the like power of it coming, but I end up doing like such goofy stuff all the time. I love making 1 million combustible Gear Hulks and just being like, how much damage do you want to take? Or can I draw 3? Your choice.
Maybe you got Inferno Titan in there?
Oh, I do. I do.
Good. Go good.
Yeah.
That's
of
awesome.
Course.
That's awesome.
Inferno Titan. I have the Kaldheim showcase version of Inferno Titan.
Ooh,
it set me back a good $2 and it's beautiful.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay. So, Dana, thank you for that. I think that's very helpful for people getting a feel for who you are. And I think it's going to be really cool having your take on things, just having a bit of that sort of that more original era of MTG, old school style, as well as, being directly involved in the new school and everything. And I think the thing that and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding of your take was that you're a pretty well-rounded guy in general, because you get a lot of like old school guys who are like, yeah, old school or bust, but like you can I think see kind of on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's from my old days at Paradox, playing and doing the old Tuesday or Thursday night drafts and doing the Iron Man pre-releases and things like that.
Those ones.
A lot of the players that used to play there, I don't see that competitiveness that used to be with a lot of those players. I mean, it still exists, don't get me wrong, but it was, almost to the point of being a little toxic. This would go back, I guess, like Brad Nelson era.
Sure.
He used to play at the shop.
Yeah. By the way, for anyone who doesn't know, pro player Brad Nelson was a local at our shop for a while, and there was definitely some teeth cutting happening for our players back then. It was like that was a competitive era in our region until. Well, it wasn't like because he moved away or anything. I think it just like was I'm sure there's a number of things that go into it, but. If I really had to peg anything, I think, and we're going to talk about this maybe as our transition in general, but Magic has made a number of decisions. Wizards has made a number of decisions over time, and one of them during that area was sort of like changing how they approached competitive events in general, and changing their because what you're talking about is really the last era of PTQs just being like you go to the PTQ. And then you play in the PTQ, and that's how you qualify for a Pro Tour qualifier for people who don't know. And then they changed it. Okay, well, now you can go to a pre-PTQ, and then you can go to a regional PTQ if you win in the pre-PTQ. And it's sort of, I think that really obfuscated the route to being a competitive player. And I think it took a while, but it really I think it kicked people out of being interested.
Well, I mean, yeah, you really had to dedicate yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, and as you can see, I mean, that was one thing that Brad did. I mean, he really dedicated himself to that. His brother dedicated himself to that. And
there's incredible players too.
Right. And, you know, I remember, I mean, way back in the day, I remember playing with Corey, and he actually taught me some things. And the funny thing is, you mentioned Tim LaRue. I originally introduced Magic to Tim, and
nice.
Tim is a far better player than I am. I mean, he is once he got really into it, he kind of showed me some of the optimizations that we talked about earlier. So,
yeah.
I mean, and he's very modest, and he'll never admit it, but he's a very good player.
Yeah. No, he is too. We were really just like throwing around cards for fun that night, and I think that's what he does now. He's just really playing Commander and like kind of goofing around and stuff. But I can always tell. I feel like when I play Tim, there's this like he's never really showing his hand, but he's always thinking on that next level about the whole thing, and he'll just kind of get you when he pulls off something like that. He'll have a little smirk and a smile and like, nope, that's what happens here, and you're like, oh man, you got me.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think let's use that as a little springboard here. So the topic of the day is I think I maybe didn't even mention this at the beginning, but I'm sure people can read the title. 2022 look back on Magic the Gathering here. With Dana and myself, we're going to dive into how Magic the Gathering was treated in 2022. And boy, Dana, it was a year of some kind for Magic the Gathering. Right. I think we can agree on that.
Oh, absolutely.
So just to give a little context, I think this has been most helpful for everyone to start by just kind of outlining the era we're talking about. So what 2022 was. So 2022 for Magic the Gathering began with Innistrad Double Feature, which I would love to talk about some amount here. And delved into a few new core sets: Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, Streets of New Capenna, Dominaria United, and the Brothers War. So those are all our standard sets. But Magic is not happy to just release 4 sets a year. That would be far too few.
Yeah, those are the tent pole.
Yes.
Sets.
In addition, then we had that Innistrad Double Feature. We had Dungeons and Dragons Battle for Baldur's Gate Commander Legends. Probably wins the award for the longest title of the year.
Yes.
Unfinity released eventually. We'll talk about that.
And Double Masters 2022.
Double Masters 2022 took everyone's money right in the middle of the year.
Oh, yes.
There's a Jumpstart 2022 product that released right at the end of the year here. Which is just coming out now as we're looking at our Dominaria Remastered previews for next year.
Yes.
There was a Warhammer 40K. Hey, how convenient too. We talked about Warhammer going into this. So Warhammer 40K Commander deck release happened, as well as I can't even go into the number of secret layers that released this year, but including collaborations with Street Fighter and everyone's favorite Fortnite.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the right response. Yeah.
And Transformers.
Oh, and yeah, we have a new Transformers secret layer up right now, but then the Transformers came into Brothers War also.
Yep.
And that, man, okay, so that was our year of releases, Dana. What I don't know, I don't even know where to start, but Dana, how was 2022?
Well, I mean, I think we can start we'll start at the beginning. We'll start with Innistrad Double Feature. I think you know, the expectations with Double Feature were like, we're going to curate some cards from each Innistrad Midnight Hunt, which is from earlier in 2021, and then with Crimson Vow, which came out was kind of the holiday season set from 2021. Mm-hmm. And what ended up happening is they basically just used the same art and then finished everything in black and white, and then just slapped the 2 sets together, and then increased the price.
Photoshop. Desaturate.
Yes, exactly.
They did it. Okay. I don't disagree at all. Man, I want to start by saying what a product I think this would have been if it were a curated set.
Yes, it would have been awesome.
Very cool, like draft format could have been created, because there are some interesting sort of synergies that can exist between those 2 sets with the mechanics they use.
Yeah, totally.
But okay, just to like slightly devil's advocate, I guess, on this Tybalt's advocate or something. So there are some different card frames that were applied. So I think a lot of people like to use the desaturate joke I did, which but they did go and they put in some different card frames, and then there is a unique foiling that the silver screen foil is actually different than just your bog standard foil on cards.
Oh, certainly.
So there's like a couple of things there, but it's the kind of release that I think there was so much just like anticipation for like what that meant right away. And then when it was finally revealed, it just felt like a letdown.
Yeah, I think a lot of people felt that. I think monetarily, for the people who are collecting sealed product, it was a limited release, and so I know there was quite a few people who bought like just, I'll take a case of those.
Yeah.
And they're going to sit on them because it's a limited release, and 5 years from now they're going to get even now you can get some decent money for them. You're going to at least get your investment.
I said that right after they released too, because I think it's not like this was any sort of a crazy called shot or anything. It feels like a pretty low hanging fruit called shot, but just the fact that it was a limited release and due to the fact that because it's just the two sets combined, there's so many rares and mythics. It would mean that, and plus a foil in every pack, it would mean that when you happen to hit a foil of anything good, there's some real potential value there. So I did peg it right away as the kind of set where like, even if this is like kind of disappointing, I think you can sit on this and be pretty happy with it. Yeah,
absolutely. And I agree. And I think a lot of people do. So, I mean, and there were some definitely good cards in there. I mean, and I know some people who went in and they're like, I'm going to collect the entire set of foils. And I'm like, party on.
Quite an undertaking to do that.
But other than that, I think because it was not curated, there was in the general, the general feel I got from players was that it was like, it's cool, I guess, but I'm not really excited by it because we just got done with Innistrad. I want something else. Yeah,
I think it was an interesting choice too to release it immediately following Crimson Vow. Like, Don't you think this is the kind of product where if like next year it comes out or something and they're like, hey, remember these cards, you've gotten to see like how they performed, and like, how about you pick up some more and like remember the good old times of blood tokens and God trying to track day and night in paper.
And even, had they released it a little down the road and then included some stuff from Shadows, included some stuff from the original Innistrad thrown in there, just maybe like in a Mystical Archive slot or something like that. I think that would have been kind of neat. Like
why couldn't this have just been a Innistrad remastered kind of set where like they take that, Innistrad's just a fan favorite plane. They take a greatest hits of Innistrad, Shadows, original Innistrad block, Shadows over Innistrad block, the Midnight Hunt Crimson Vow stuff, and then they have a slot where you get silver screen foils, alternate framing of the cards, and like they can do all that stuff. It's just like it really just felt like they kicked it out the door because I don't know. It's really, I'm never the person who just goes, yeah, it was a cash grab, but it's really hard for me to look at it and not like think this just feels like it wasn't, it wasn't a fully thought out product, just kind of one that kicked out.
Yeah. And I feel you there for the cash grab. I mean, that is a general consensus among just about everybody that was kind of just a cash grab by Wizards. And maybe, yes, it was, but I don't think that's all it was. I think what happened is I think that maybe originally it was supposed to be curated, and then they're just like, no, I think Daddy Hasbro is like, no, let's get it out. Yeah. That if that's the case, it's unfortunate that we missed that. But also, it's like we talked about this in our very last episode too about the Dragon Ball Super one, talking about executive meddling, and it's like, it's kind of like, well, what can you do at the end of the day? Same reason I don't always love diving into the whole cash grab argument, because like something that I think a lot of people need to keep in mind too is that like as much as we love all of the community and collecting aspects of these hobbies, that ultimately the
the businesses do need to continue making money in some way.
Absolutely.
And I think I now just to be clear, like, is Hasbro making enough money where they don't need to like do things like that? Probably. I would like it, I'm not going to argue with you if that's your argument. Like, well, they're already making enough money. Okay, I don't do the books, but I do see where they post every year when they talk about their new ballooning profits or whatever. It's like, good for them. But that's also why I don't immediately jump to calling things cash grabs, because like, yeah, that's, to some degree that's the point. But I think that carries a connotation of, it wasn't, I think the real thing you want to talk about was this product was this player friendly? Was this collector friendly? Like, it doesn't have to be players, it can be collectors too. But like, was this friendly for the consumers in a way where they were like reaching out and giving them something that they, even if they didn't know they wanted, ultimately something they wanted. And in this case, I think a lot of us were really hoping it was something we wanted, but it wasn't. Right.
I personally liked the, I think they kind of overdid it with talking about outside the IP, where they included the Dracula cards in Crimson Vow. I mean, there were some really cool ones, and I really thought they were neat, especially that Sorin Planeswalker with the Castlevania art.
It's too bad, actually. So, okay, first of all, back here for people who are watching the visual one, if you ever wondered why I have a copy of Dracula on my shelf back here, it's because I love Dracula. And for a while before I put in my brick backdrop here, I had that Sorin Castlevania art hanging behind me. So it is my favorite. I'm going to say right now for 2022, my single favorite card visually that released by far was the Sorin Dracula. And it's honestly, it's one of my like top 3 cards of all time. I just love, I adore so much about it, because Castlevania is a franchise that is very, very near and dear to me, very close to my heart. It's one of my, it's one of just my core things about me, is that I love the whole gothic horror, Castlevania, Metroidvania, everything that stems from it. I love it all. So it's very cool to see that.
I just watched a 7-hour YouTube video on the whole start of Castlevania, from the original game all the way to where it is now. And where they're asking the question, we got this cool anime series on Netflix.
Yeah.
But we don't have a good Castlevania game.
Yeah, like it's like, you know what though, I'm gonna go ahead, while we're on the subject, slightly off topic, I'm gonna go ahead and plug it right now. If you've been waiting for a good Castlevania game and you decided for some reason not to check out Bloodstained, which is by Igarashi, the guy who did Symphony of the Night and created Metroidvania effectively. You got to go. It's like cheap everywhere. It was in a Humble Bundle at one point. Like, just, you can find Bloodstained anywhere. Just get it and try it. You'll have a great time if you love that. It leans into everything you love about Symphony of the Night and its own system. It's great though. It's really good. It's really good.
Like a love song or a love note to Castlevania. Is that kind of what it is?
It's Iga just making the game that he wanted to make. Without being constrained by anything that Konami required about Castlevania. So
sure.
He took all his, like, it's like a greatest hits of all the systems, all the little mechanical systems he put into various Igavania style Castlevanias over the years, and then he just like slapped in his own story and was like, here you go. And if, by the way, if you like original NES Castlevania, the Bloodstained retro versions, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon and Curse of the Moon 2 are also incredible, but they're that like NES style Castlevania and not the Symphony of the Night. But either way, it's like, if you're a Castlevania fan of any kind, you should be checking out Bloodstained. You'll love it.
Sweet. I will. Castlevania was the first game I bought for my Nintendo.
Oh, that's so sick. Dana, I knew we were good friends. I knew it. I knew we were connected here.
It was Castlevania and Bionic Commando.
Oh, incredible. Okay, so moving on. Actually, you know what? Speaking of Bionic Commando, let's talk about Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, where I feel like that's kind of a segue. I don't know. It's close. You got like people with like augments, and it's like it's more cyberpunk. Isn't quite what Bionic Commando was, but it's close. So Kamigawa Neon Dynasty was the first core set release, not core set, but a first standard tentpole, as you said earlier, set of the year, and in my opinion, thematically the best set of the year.
Agreed.
I think that's a pretty
agree.
common opinion. There's definitely, it turns some people off with the slight sci-fi / future slant of it.
Sure.
But I couldn't get enough of that set. I loved it top to bottom.
Yeah, I bought a case of collectors of Kamigawa, and I think I bought a case of set boxes for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's, if you're gonna buy collectors though, that was the set with the neon Hidetsugus and the Wandering Emperors, etched foils, all that stuff to chase.
Yeah, I never pulled a neon.
Oh, really? Shoot.
But funny story is that one of our regulars that comes in and buys, he pulled one out of a Japanese pack, which you weren't supposed to be able to. And then,
yeah, that's right.
And then just I want to say a week or two ago, he just bought a random collector pack and pulled another one.
Oh my God.
I mean, it wasn't the red one; it was like the blue one or the green one. And
I think I know who you're talking about too.
Yes, yeah.
he's a well-known person in our area. He's always pulling all the hot stuff every set. So
yes.
Yeah. Neon Dynasty did a few things I think really well. One was, in general, just like the theming was, I think it was a really good way to revisit a plane with a fresh, like, just honestly, it's just this like jump in timeline or whatever that they did here. Gave it, made it feel very fresh but familiar, and it just felt like it was kind of nailed in the right way.
Yeah, I agree.
And they did a good job also of like bringing back the mechanics that worked, like things like ninjutsu returning, was what people wanted, period.
Right.
But then it had a few of its own, relatively, not too crazy, but I personally really liked the like whole artifacts and enchantments and like trying to meld the two with depending on which colors you played and stuff. That was like that wasn't like a keyword theme of the set, but it was a theme of the set. And you had random artifact creatures and random enchantment creatures and the sagas that turned into enchantment creatures. Actually, I think right away everyone was really down on those, but they were actually really good. They became quite a hit.
I mean, well, look at Fable the Mirror Breaker.
Fable was the one where everyone right away was like, "This seems pretty good," but
but it was like originally it was like $1.
Yeah,
it wasn't even a $1 card, and now if anybody in Standard and Pioneer are playing Red, they're probably playing that.
It's hard. It's a hard card not to. From my experience playing Arena 2, it's like you're building a deck with Red in it, and you're like, well, I got some room. I should probably slot in Mirror Breaker. It's just like the value is always there for it. And usually with most decks, just because of the nature of what cards are good, which is like ones that generate value immediately for you, it just tends to be good to have Kiki-Jiki in your deck.
Right.
So
and then,
doesn't ever hurt.
Bringing back the dragons with the death triggers.
And good cycle of dragons too.
And then the channel lands. I mean,
yep. And they were hit cards, multi-format all-stars. The channel lands, you play them in like every format. If you have the capability of slotting in a couple of random lands, there's like no reason not to. And like I think some people could probably see that as like maybe lazier design. Just given that like, they're just good lands or whatever. But I feel like they came off just feeling fairly interesting. And like it's the kind of thing where it's good to have, I don't want them to make every land. I don't want like basics now can be channeled to do something or whatever, right? Like, because I think that would be, there's other card games. If you want to play card games where your lands do stuff, there's plenty of other card games where you can do that. But it's part of the feel of Magic to have the land system in it. But it's nice to sometimes have like, I love these games where I drew my Boseiju. Now do I need to play this as a land right now? Should I hold it? It like produces some interesting decisions that you make.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah, so Neon Dynasty went very well. In fact, to the point where we did a whole podcast, previous episode about it. And if you missed that, you can go back, check out. I talked to Maindeck Kevin about that, about he hadn't played Magic at all for years. He was like I don't think he was like anti-Magic, but he wasn't pro-Magic. He was just like, yeah, Magic's like whatever. Like, yeah, I don't need to play that. Like, these other games are better or whatever. And Neon Dynasty really enticed him. with especially because I think he's a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Fist of the North Star fan. And so he loved the references and he loved the artwork by the mangaka who did Fist of the North Star and everything. And he was like, and then the cyberpunk theme, and he was like, this is really just appealing to me. And I think a lot of people felt that. That was my so that's my pick for definitely set of the year. I think that set was for players, for collectors, for established players, and for out of the loop players. It was kind of a hit all around.
It was. I mean, it really did. It hit those people who are fans of the anime. Like you said, the artwork, Fist of the North Star in particular, it brought back all those mechanics that people loved. It didn't bring back some of the broken things, like the JIT style things.
Come on. They had cute homages to like Life of Toshiro Umezawa is the saga that does JIT effects as you're going down it, and like that's another example I think of where it was just like, I think that's the perfect way to do it. It's like making sure you remember, like, this is still the same plane, this is still the same universe, and these are the things you loved about it, but we're maybe not gonna break the game, and we're not gonna just like force it into your face like I feel like some return to sets have been a little more like, I think Ravnica is the one that always is like, yeah, it's Ravnica. Remember Ravnica? Remember the guilds? Remember the Niv Mizzet? He's back again. And it's like, okay, all right, that's great, but could use maybe something a little more of a fresh coat of paint. And Neon Dynasty just was perfect.
Yes, yep, it did. I thought their marketing was good. I mean, and because it was good for the community, it was good for the players, collectors, and everything was good for the retailers, which, and that was one thing, I guess, that, especially coming off the pandemic, is that, people just, wanted to play. They wanted to play stuff. And so even if they're playing at home, the pandemic did a lot, along with getting those $1,400 checks or whatever they had, you could invest that into something you normally wouldn't, one of your luxury cardboard games.
Yes.
So,
which caused quite a ballooning of prices across the TCG market, which are now starting to, they're pulling back a little bit, which is expected, of course, in more of a recession-like time too. So
right.
But yeah, it's. I mean, I think it was there for a lot of people right away at a good time too. The timing, I think that's a good point, that the timing for it was also, it was slotted in very well for what it is.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about, so Infinity was supposed to come out, but then it didn't for much later.
Right.
Which they say was due to stickers, which I think the player base probably doesn't necessarily agree that stickers were that important to delay the set for.
Right. I mean, it is Infinity. Yes, that's kind of a fun thing. It's a fun new thing. I think the only big detraction that I could say was making Infinity Legacy legal, Commander legal.
Yeah, I'm torn on this one, honestly. I actually think it's a great idea to make me actually care about. I opened packs of Infinity.
Oh, I did too.
But I've never done that for an unset before, because why would I spend money on them, But in this case, I went for it because, well, they also tempted me with Shocklands, of course. Of course they did. But I knew that even if I didn't hit the Shocklands, I was probably going to find a few cards that I might be able to slot in something, like some Saw and Halves or something like that.
Saw and Half, Space Jace, and
I wanted to open Space Jace. I didn't. I wanted him though. He's cool.
Happy Cosmo the puppy, and the nearby planet, and then Urza's Funhouse. So that ties. We can tie that in later into Brothers.
Ooh, yeah, good point.
More Urza lands.
But yeah, I guess we'll just keep talking about it now since we're here, even though Infinity didn't release till later. But I think ultimately the issue with Infinity, in my mind, I guess I remember I had one particular thought about it at the time, which is that Infinity felt a little too paint by numbers Magic design to me, meaning that I thought there were a number of creative ideas. We already mentioned them, like Saw and Half. I love that. The jokey Urza's Land thing. Great. The Planeswalkers are great. Just the kind of crazy, zany. Like they're never going to actually print this, but this is the time to do it.
Sure.
My favorite card in the set is Form of the Approach of the Second Sun. By far my favorite card in the set. If you don't know what this card does, well, you can listen to me right now or pause and go look up Form of the Approach of the Second Sun and read it, because the experience reading it is like worth it as you figure out what this is doing. But the concept is you become a copy of the card Approach of the Second Sun, which is a card that you pay 7 mana, you gain 7 life, and then it goes 7 cards underneath,
deep in your deck.
7 deep in your library. If this is the second time you've cast Approach of the Second Sun this game, you win the game, right? So like Form of the Approach of the Second Sun is like, what if we combine Approach of the Second Sun with Form of the Dragon? Form of the Dragon, classic card where you become a dragon, but this time you're going to become Approach of the Second Sun. You take the top cards, 6 cards of your library, and you put them on top of your head.
Yep.
And now you are the Approach of the Second Sun in your deck, and when you draw yourself, you win the game. And like, I couldn't get over that idea when I read it, because that is the kind of thing that from an unset I'm personally looking for. This just okay, if you're going to make playable cards for me, that's great. I want Sonhalf, I want Space Jace, I want all that stuff. If you're going to make something I can't actually play, you have to knock my socks off with this idea, right?
Right.
And my problem was that, and this is going to tie into what you're saying, but like when they decided to make stickers and attractions the sort of the main mechanical, skeleton of the set, which they decided to make legacy legal, and legal, depending on the attractions, of course, but whatever. Yes. Then to kind of mechanically tie the set together, the rest of the feel like a good chunk of the set just is like, it's 4 mana 3/3 that does a sticker thing, and it's a 5 mana 5/4 and it does an attraction thing and stuff, and it's like I mean, I just snooze fest, I'm just like over this pack, like I don't care. I don't care about draft chaff if I'm buying. Like, I get that people are like trying to play limited with Infinity, but like, I guess, does it have to be a honed in numbers perfect limited set if it's Unfinity? I don't, I would rather have seen them pull back. And like, I think some of the stuff they did I went back and I was looking at like the earlier unsets a little bit and was like, I just felt like the designs were a little more top down inspired, where I felt like this set had like a couple bottom up designers on it who were just like, we got to make attractions work. We got to make stickers work. And like, if they don't work, 1, it just doesn't matter. And 2, just toss them out. Put something more fun in that works then, I think. So that's my take on it.
No, and I don't have much to disagree on it. I mean the basic lands, the whole planetary lands are absolutely gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Once again, I think, and the Shockland reprints with the art, I think they just knocked that out of the park. Just absolutely love it.
Galaxy foil, this like old like Pokemon holographic. I love it. Toss it on. I want to see Magic doing more stuff like that in general. One of my takeaways for the year is just watching Magic is that I still haven't had one thing fulfilled about Magic that bothers me. And this is coming from someone whose perspective is watching a lot of different TCGs all the time. But Magic is the game that does not have an excuse. It doesn't have an excuse for doing things worse than other TCGs do. Like, I love that there are other TCGs that are putting out incredible stuff. That's awesome. But then you look at Magic and you're like, Magic has no reason, it has all the resources in the world, it has the biggest player base and everything. There's no reason ever for Magic to not be setting the bar constantly for everything they're doing. I feel like in some ways Wizards continues to coast a little bit. They I think at one point they sort of like got into a position where they started coasting when other card games started going, oh, we gotta compete.
We gotta innovate.
Yep. And I think there's some things Magic does. There are some things that Magic does better than anyone else. Things like the tightness of the rules is like every TCG needs to always look at Magic and go, okay, that's how we do it. Like, if it's either this or better, like that's how we have to do this. And if you don't aim that high, you end up with lots and lots of weird, murky, quirky ruling things. So, there's stuff they do. But like when it comes to production of cards, like the Galaxy foils are beautiful. I think they're really cool. I think they're awesome. And they're a great step, but there are still games that are doing it better, and it's like,
They're like 5 years late on it.
Yeah. Or like some people pointed out, this is like the same foiling that was on base set Pokemon. It's very similar. I'm going to say that. And it's interesting that, thematically, I get why they chose it, but it's like, it's one of those like sort of step back comparisons you can make and go, okay, well, cool. So they're now, where are we? 25 years behind Pokemon, I guess. Right. So, I definitely would like to see them continuing to take some of those like card treatments, some of the things they're doing. For me, one of the big things that happened this year, I guess we'll just like dive a little bit, talk about this real quick, but like they finally announced the return of regionals.
Yep.
To a degree, which is, it was important. It was important. It's been important for Magic to once again take the reins of, like we said earlier, Dana, the ones who invented tournament play effectively. They have been outdone this year. We'll talk about this in some of our upcoming podcasts too. Games like Flesh and Blood are running circles around MTG for offering a competitive environment that people are engaged with, interested in playing in, and actively seeking to get involved in.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yeah, and Magic, what Magic has kind of done through, some of them, like I said earlier, they started by like, kind of pulling back a little bit, obfuscating the process. I don't think they intended to obfuscate it, but the way they went about trying to solve one problem of theirs, I think created two problems in the process, Yeah. And they've never really been able to recover. So I was very excited this year when they said, okay, regionals are coming back. I remember there was like some electric attitude from MTG players, like, this is it. Here comes the push. And then they announced it's being hosted by DreamHack and not Wizards. Like, oh, okay. And then they said, well, you're going to get promos. Like, okay. And then the promos they showed off were just normal cards with an alternate art and a foil. And it's like, guys, do you see what other games are doing? Like, do you look at what else is happening here? That was my take on it right away. It's like, you're not drawing me in. When you do it like that.
I mean, some of the old like Grand Prix. I've got a few of the old Grand Prix promos, and there's so much. I mean, then they're awesome. They're awesome cards.
Yeah.
Where they haven't really done that with the new promos. I mean, even with the recent RCQ, I'm just trying to think what the promo was. For special art Surge Engine from Brothers War.
Surge Engine, everyone's favorite competitive all-star.
Right. Yeah. And then trying to think, the Thraben Inspector was the participation one.
Yep.
And it was cool art.
That's a card I've used in Cube.
Sure. And,
that's all I got.
And then there was I can't remember what the top 8 was. It was a spirit of some sort. It was a better card, and it's definitely seen play in like Pioneer and Modern Spirits at one point in time, but I mean, it's not certainly not a card that you would go after. Unless you just go ahead.
Yeah, no, but I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, I'm totally with you. I remember back in the day going to Grand Prix. I went to Grand Prix where I went and I got Chrome Moxes for playing, like Chrome Mox, like. It was like,
I've got 4 of them.
Yeah, there was a Grand Prix where they gave away Umezawa's G-Taste. There's a great, like they were giving out some pretty, like the picks for cards were great back then.
Right.
The thing that was interesting at the time, like that was sort of before the current era of modern card games, though. We're in the current era of modern card games. It's actually just not enough to put an alternate art on a card. There are a lot of games here. Actually, sorry if you're on the audio only version of the podcast. This is going to be a visual thing, but I have right here. This is an example of what card games are offering right now. Right. This is beautiful. Yeah, this is a full art. It's got a hot stamp promo. This is for the upcoming card game Grand Archive. Okay. This is a game that doesn't even exist yet. Okay. This is because I'm an ambassador for the game because I really believe in it.
Legit.
And they sent me that so I could show it to people, basically, because it's an example of what their most collectible cards, what their tournament promos that are chase tournament promos and everything are going to look like. And it's an example of the stuff you can do to make it so that people want to go get your card and by extension then want to compete and want to end up like, you know, playing in their locals to get ready for the event and everything. It all chains down from there.
Yep.
And the first step is just making people want to play in your events. But, and I have noticed now, so at the beginning of the year, they made that initial DreamHack regional announcement. And I was definitely like, I was vocal at the time too. Like, this is not what we're looking for. I'm pretty sure.
Right.
But since then I've noticed that the tournament promos they've been announcing have been borderless card arts. They've been more like secret lair treatments of cards and like, okay, that's a good step. That's the kind of thing that we're looking to see, I think.
Yes.
I would like to see them, however, continue this. I really think that it needs to be concerted effort from Wizards to make these events, host these events themselves where they can put all their time and effort into it and get back to the point where, again, there shouldn't be smaller card games showing them up. Their promos should be top quality and the events should be accessible and they should be big and exciting and fun. And that's what we need to get to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think back to the midnight pre-releases, you know, and some of that stuff. I mean, it was just a blast. I mean, those days, those were the days before the event center in the back. I remember playing on the floor in the front, playing on the carpet, you know, and that was those are good memories for me. I thought that was fun. I
was working as a judge and working at the shop you're talking about, Paradox, for a while back then. And at that time, during like when our Magic was really the biggest that it could be as far as like just in person, like players playing in events. I think, again, like Magic is bigger still than it has been, but the problem is a lot of that is a casual base now that is playing at home or just like, you know, whatever. And like, which is great for Magic, but for your local stores, it doesn't have the same communal feeling that it did back then. And back then we had so many people coming to events. Sorry, actually, now that I think about it, you're talking about a time before this. I'm talking about after Paradox opened this event center, and we would get pre-releases where we literally filled up this 100-person event center and then went into the main store and filled that up.
Yep.
And then I remember I don't remember which event it was. It was somewhere around like Rise of the Eldrazi, maybe around that era, when I literally had to go, okay, you guys, I'm sorry, you're at the end of the list. You have to sit on the floor here and play because literally we have 2 full like stores worth of tables that are all taken up. But I swear after round 1, you'll probably get on a table, but try and win if you want to get to an actual table.
Yeah, no, I remember I was there for Rise of Eldrazi. That was one of the times I came back.
Yeah. It was, you know, and I really think it's like part of it is just getting people to understand that like they, you know, there is a path for them to compete and they don't have to be a number 1 player too. That's another thing another issue with Magic is how big it is.
Yeah.
Makes it so that if you want to try and be like a name in Magic, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and probably a lot of money, honestly, just like not buying cards, but just like going to events and grinding and everything. The events you can get to because they're not very accessible right now. But like back then, I feel like it was more like, you know, we had, the problem is that like their Magic's putting in like arena opens and all this stuff. That's really great. But I feel like it's a lot of small events that feed one very difficult to achieve dream. And I feel like we're sort of missing the stepping stones in between, because all I really wanted to do back then was do well at a Grand Prix, which were open attendance and were everywhere. That was my goal. I didn't even think like I'm gonna top cut a PTQ. Like my goal considered myself a competitive player at the time, but I was like, I will be happy if I can attend one of these Grand Prix and do well. I made a day 2 of one time, and I was like, I'm on top of the world right now. I got summarily destroyed by Shuhei Nakamura in the next day. I drafted, and he drafted, this is Zendikar, he drafted blue. Blue is known as the worst color in Zendikar. He had a blue-green deck. I was like, I know Zendikar, easy. Draft mono black. This is or black red or whatever. I draft black. I draft Trusty Machete. I knew that draft format, right? So I was making the picks. Vampire Nighthawk. Ooh, I'm on fire here.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm on fire. I drafted, but the problem was, of course, everybody knew that. So I'm sure I was actually getting cut a lot of like important cards. Shuhei classic, the old cultural differences between the different regions playing Magic. Japan always tended to have a slightly altered take on things. Shuhei probably was as an incredibly smart player, was like just leaning on that, drafting into blue-green, ended up with like this deck where he's like playing I don't remember the name of it. It's like an instant that's like -4/-0 something draw card. Like a card I would have said like, yeah, that's not even like that's like a 16th pick card. Like get it out of my face, or whatever. I get wrecked by it. And I'm like, I mean, this is why I'm not Shuhei Nakamura, right? This is why I'm not a pro player. But I didn't care because like I achieved my goal. I was like, I made day 2. I felt good about myself. And without having events where people can go to those on a regular basis, have access to them all across the country, run by Wizards, promoted with prizes that are fitting, like entry prizes that are fitting for the time of Magic time of card games that we're in, where they get you excited and they make you want to play. It's really tough for people to get in on that earlier level where they're coming into local events and being like, I should play, like I wouldn't have missed the Zendikar pre-release because I needed to learn that format, right? Sure. I needed to play in it. And Arena plays into this whole thing, but I almost feel like that's another discussion too.
I think we could probably, we could talk about specifically about Arena and its effect on paper Magic for hours.
I think Dana, let's do this. Let's go ahead and footnote the Arena thing, and we're gonna say that I'm gonna bring you back on sometime if you're willing, and
Absolutely.
we'll do an Arena podcast, and it'll just be really interesting, I think, to talk about that for an extended period of time, about the impact of Arena on paper. But I think like my general thought on this is just that I'm really happy that Wizards started to push into competitive play again, but I feel like 2022 was not the year of competitive Magic.
No, not at all.
So I'm hoping it gets better.
And I have some hope. We've got there's some other events that aren't necessarily part of the DreamHack PTQ. I think there's a Magic Con in Minneapolis, May 6th, I believe, which I would have loved to go, but it's free comic book day, so I'm stuck at the store.
Yes. So. Yep. No, I understand that. I've been there. Right. Been there, done that, my friend. And actually it's worth mentioning too, just on the event schedule, there were a couple of pretty big ticket events that happened this year too. There was a 30th anniversary event in Las Vegas.
Yep.
Which I'm going to just hold off on that discussion on that for the very end of the podcast.
Sure.
And then there was an interesting, like, I don't remember the name of it, but there was a sort of a third party event where it was hosted, I think, Salt Lake City.
I'm trying to remember. I know the professor from Tellurian Community College was there, along with, I think, the Command Zone folks.
Yeah, and there were like a million cool artists that were going down. They were like, I think it was sort of being marketed really as like a big, like a convention full of artists and like more casual and just like kind of like collector side of things and enjoying that stuff.
And like where the old Grand Prix and the old big events, you'd have the main event going on, and then you'd have all these side events, you know, that anybody could get into, and all had cool prizes, and I think that was kind of the focus.
Right.
And a lot of people that I talked to who even went to like the Atlanta regional qualifier or regional event, just played in some of those side events and had, a whole bunch of fun, which I think is what was really awesome about those events back in the day. I've been to a couple of them, never for the main event because I'm not that great a Magic player, but always just to be there and meet all these people from all over the country and all over the world who played this game that we love.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that definitely was what was most fun about it, and that's why they really need to have, again, just more of these things should be taking place like throughout the year. I do miss the old schedule. I don't know if like that's exactly the way it should continue to be done, but it needs to be something different than what it currently is.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see that, because again, like the Magic Con is not something, it's third party, it's not a DreamHack, it's not Wizards. It's people who love the game, retailers, of course, because you need capital to get these things going. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yep. We'll see. I think that'll be something I'm looking forward to see in 2023. What changes? So okay, gonna continue our discussion here. Let's talk about Streets of New Capenna. So that was the second sort of tentpole release. This was the one that I pegged as the least interesting to me of the year before it released.
Sure.
And ultimately after it released, I probably still feel that way. Although it was a better set than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. I mean, there were some cool things about it. I kind of liked the what am I thinking of for their art style?
Art Nouveau was really what they were leaning on. Yeah.
And I thought some of the art, specifically with the basic lands and some of their special treatments, looked amazing.
I will say that that New Capenna, Wizards is so weird, man. I don't know how to peg these guys, because like New Capenna showed us that they did know how to do special card treatments to make things look cool. With the gilded foil treatment that they did is those are some of the coolest
absolutely
looking cards that they've come out with, but I don't understand why it's just so hit or miss every time with like how far they're willing to go in like making their cards stand out. It's strange to me.
And perhaps, they thought because Capenna wasn't a huge seller that they're like, oh, well, we did that cool card treatment, but people didn't like it, so we're not going to go forward and do that again.
I think I also thought that they were pushing that into that set because they thought it wasn't necessarily going to be like raking in the cash right away. And so they wanted to, they wanted to try and put something in to get people fired up to pick it up.
Sure.
So it's kind of hard to know exactly what they were thinking and why they can't seem to like just nail down a way of doing things. But we had neon ink foil in Kamigawa, we had gilded foil in New Capenna, we had textured foil in Double Masters 22, which then they've had etched foils in all of these sets.
Yep.
And they like a galaxy foil and Infinity. Like, I don't like, I guess if their thing is to just do a unique foil thing in every set, that's fine. But I feel like they don't, I kind of think they should really find something that works really well and maybe like stick to it a little bit.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for just like a couple of cards in every set or something. Sure.
Well, I mean, even with that neon ink, that was a big seller for the people who wanted to hit them. They wanted those, even though Hitotsugu was not necessarily that good a card.
No, it was an interesting choice of a card actually to put that on. It's like why wasn't that on Kaido Shizuki or like just like they're already doing cool Wandering Emperor, so like let's make Kaido kind of neat too, because otherwise like Kaido, a lot of people probably already forgot about him. He's a fine planeswalker.
Yeah, I mean I play him in Yuriko.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that makes sense. Yeah, Streets of New Capenna. It was a shard themed set. It had interesting. It had like 5. Once again, it was one of those like 5 shards, 5 mechanics kind of deal. It was like I feel like in some ways it was kind of like you've seen this before, but it's got a little different coat of paint on it. It's like
right, and
it was all right.
And I think, I mean, just remember talking to players about drafting, and they didn't like they really liked the Kamigawa draft. That was a pretty popular limited set. Capenna, not so much. I mean, they said it. I mean, because a lot of the stuff in there was more. I mean, it seemed more commandery, especially with your main, with your mob bosses from each guild or each house. Very very commandery, and definitely not something that. I mean, maybe it'd be a limited bomb, but 3 colors and 8 mana.
Yeah, I played a lot of. I play a lot of sealed in every set in Arena, and then I play some amount of draft for each one. And the one thing that I can't help but thinking, like from every set I see, is that like I really think they're better at designing sets for sealed than they are for draft. Which I don't know if that's like a hot take or like a take a lot of people don't hear, but my reason for that is that like New Capenna draft, you are usually best off playing 2 colors because it's more consistent. New Capenna sealed, you pretty much always played one of the 5 wedges, 3 color wedge. Dominaria United, you're usually best off playing 2 colors, maybe splashing a kicker 3rd color, but it's like only on kicker effects and not nothing else. Dominaria United sealed, I had so many like 5 color pools that were like, this is legitimately powerful, like really good. The format's just slower and sealed where it works. Brothers War, the general consensus is prototype cards are just kind of bad on both sides, so don't play them because the game usually ends before you can play the high mana value one. Right. But in sealed, prototype cards are anchors of the format because it goes long enough where you do get to play the other end of them. It's like every single set. It's like, this just kind of works better in sealed. I'm not sure why. If it wasn't for just the like random chance of getting bombs or not getting bombs, it feels like sealed would be like the optimal way to play the game.
Yeah. And I think you're right. So I mean, So recently doing Brothers War draft, I've actually instead of breaking draft boxes open for it because we don't have a lot, I busted open pre-release kits. One thing that I noticed and a lot of players commented on was a lot of duplication in packs. So I mean, you didn't have that same that same split that you would in a draft box. As where it was more akin to that sealed format rather than. Are
you talking about like commons and uncommons or rares?
Yeah, commons and uncommons. Like there was one there was like 2 duplicates in a row of the same card.
Weird, but like also that matches my experience with it because we played one 2-headed giant game, and among our 2 pools we had it was 4 or 5 copies of the white like arrest variant in the set or something. Yep. It's like I played the white blue deck and it's like, hey look, I arrested your thing. Hey look, I arrested your thing. Like, I kept like I got more. And the hilarious thing too was I also had Hercule, that's her name.
Okay.
Who's the creature with Yu-Gi-Oh text? It's like it's just so much text, and you kind of get it by the end of when you're done reading the card. But it's like her effect is basically at the end of the turn you get to dig the top few cards of your deck, and if you find a card with a card type that you played that turn, a non-creature card type that you played that turn, you get to put it in your hand. So I was playing a deck with a whole bunch of enchantment removals. And I got to do this one time and I put out Hercule and I'm like, okay, I'm going to arrest your thing. End of my turn. Hey, look, I found one. Okay, guess what's coming next turn?
Well, hey.
Yeah,
good on you.
But yeah, like I agree with it. It was interesting that we hadn't had a pool before that had quite that many copies of several different cards. Actually, that wasn't the only one. I wonder why that is though, because you would think the packs would be made on the same line, right?
Exactly, because I mean they are draft packs. It's so I'm not sure. Yeah, interesting.
But yeah, do you have anything else to add about Streets of New Capenna before we move on?
Not a whole lot.
Yeah. Like I guess I'm with you. Streets of New Capenna. It was a fine set. I like the gilded foil treatments. But it didn't really. I don't think it really changed the game a ton. didn't really pump me up too much.
I mean, you had what was like the Kappa Cannoneer was Kamigawa. You had a couple cards that made their way into Legacy.
Usually is the way with a few things. You had Shardlands too, like the new Triumphs.
Oh yeah, the Triumphs. The Triumphs were definitely. I would say that's probably the best thing that came out of that set.
Yeah,
was the Triumphs.
Hard to argue with that. Let's talk about Dungeons and Dragons: Battle for Baldur's Gate Commander Legends.
Oh, okay. So, I love that set. I absolutely love it.
All right, I love this. That's a great. That's usually a lot of people are very down on it. And I do understand why, but I also understand your take on this, I think. But go ahead, tell us why you love it.
So I love it because the theming is great. I mean, I played Dungeons and Dragons since 1990. So I mean, in Forgotten Realms was my shtick. So like all these characters, they introduced them in the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms standard set we got in 2021, but they brought the ones they missed, like Elminster, which, that essentially is like the original D&D character. I mean, that is, and he is, there was, but I think why it didn't do so well was because Wizards marked the price up. They messed around with the size of the set boxes and the amount of cards in the set packs, and they advertised it as a commander set. And there was 2 reprints that were worth mentioning.
Yeah, I think my take on it was that the player feedback was that it was not a very strong set. I get the theming, absolutely, and I'm with you on the theming too. I mean, not even like a D&D guy, but I couldn't help but get excited seeing like the ancient dragons and everything. Like so cool to see all those. And I they're dice rolling, so they're after my heart already.
Right.
Let me roll some dice here. I just want the chance of making 20 tokens or whatever.
Right.
I know it's not going to happen. I just want the chance. And the initiative was like a good fix for venturing into the dungeon in Commander. It has proven to be exceptionally powerful in
Legacy,
in Eternal formats. Yes, and Popper had to ban a bunch of comments right away.
Yeah, there's a couple cards that are running in Legacy that are just taking over the format with initiative.
Yes, yep, they are, and but I think like the problem, and this is the interesting part here, is I'm not really sure where to place like the blame for this one exactly. I think this is an interesting set because I think things like choosing a background and stuff they sounded more exciting right away than they actually are. Right. I think choosing a background ends up being just like too fairly set up. It's like there's for some commanders it's like, well, why wouldn't I pick this one background like this? That's the one that goes with this. And for others it's like, okay, I have a choice between like option A, which is like a mildly interesting effect, or option B, which is like a mildly interesting effect. It's like there's nothing exciting there, and that's where it feels like it's just a little too like reined in, because like they didn't want to break Commander or anything. And I feel that we don't want to break Commander thing across the board with the set.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Totally.
And the thing is, as much as people like to complain about power creep, people secretly really like power creep.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do because they're excited about, and there's a limit, right? Like I'm not saying like some games go beyond the limit where it's like new set, throw your old set out. Like nobody wants that. I'm not advocating for that. But if we get a new Commander Legends set and you look at the cards and you go, I could play some of those, I guess. Like it's like not, like people are looking for, and especially, so this is where I say I don't know where to blame it, because like, especially if we're talking about what I mentioned earlier, this like Commander segment of people who are like looking for optimizations, honing their decks on EDH rec. Like how can I make this combo more and more absurd and consistent and everything? Commander Legends did not deliver for them.
Nope.
It didn't have what they're looking for. Now, if you're someone who's willing to sit back and go, well, I'm going to take out some of these tutors. I'm going to take out some of this efficient stuff, and I'm going to play Battle Angels of Tyr, and I'm going to play just like whatever like random nonsense is there. My favorite one I always mention is Wrong Turn. More people need to play Wrong Turn. That's from Commander Legends 1, but that card is hilarious. And do you know that card, Dana?
I would have to look it up, not off the top of my head.
I gotcha. 2 and a blue instant. Target opponent gains control of target creature you don't control.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's
that's good.
Nope. That one goes over there. Opponent plays Blightsteel or whatever. You're like, actually, that's gonna go to your opponent who's about to take their turn. Okay, it's your turn now. And he's like, oh look, I have a Blightsteel Colossus. How fun is that? It's like, okay, if you're someone who can get behind that kind of stuff, then Battle for Baldur's Gate definitely had stuff where you're like, oh yeah, cool, like this is awesome. But I think they maybe didn't quite grasp what their player base was looking for, unfortunately. And I think the set just fell a little flat because of that. Well,
and I think a lot of people were kind of expecting some big reprints.
Yes, I think that's too. There's like Jewel Lotus or something,
or Dockside Extortionist. I mean, because he could easily fit into the theme.
That was the big one, yeah.
I mean, and technically any of the, like, even Vampiric Tutor or anything like that could technically fit into the theme just fine. And like what we got Basilisk Collar and Blade of Selves. I think that was the 2 big reprints in there.
Basilisk Collar. Woo.
I mean, it's a good card. But it's not a great card.
Yeah.
It's great in some decks, it's great. But
very specific ones, but yes, it works.
And I don't know. I think they sabotaged it just by increasing the price at the time, and marketing it as something it wasn't, and then immediately following we got Double Masters 2022.
Yeah, and that was in my opinion, if you look at the whole year, that was really the standout release of the year. In a number of ways, kind of whichever way you look at it. Double Masters 2022 absolutely stole any thunder Battle for Baldur's Gate could have had.
Yes.
And could have generated maybe Baldur's Gate was supposed to be a slow burn, but the fire was out as soon as Double Masters 2022 dropped.
Yep.
Go for it. What's Double Masters 2022 about?
Well, I mean, I'd almost call Double Masters 2022 Commander Masters. Yeah. Because I mean, all those reprints that everybody wanted were in there. I mean, we got Bloom Tender, we've got you got
Smothering Tithe,
Teferi's Protection, Dockside.
Oh yeah, the Teferi's Protection is beautiful. Like borderless arts for all of these look so good. Richard, in my favorite, Richard Kane Ferguson. I love RKF art, and he had some bangers in there. If you love looking at you could look at his art for forever and keep finding new, like, little weird bits and bobs all over it and stuff. And he had some good stuff. Elenda the Dusk Rose, Marchesa, the rose thing. Yep, something about a rose also. Yep. Oh, wait, Marchesa's the Dust Rose. No. Which one's Elena? Or
let's see.
I don't know.
The other one.
There's all sorts of roses involved in these cards. I'm not sure why. I don't know the story. People ask, if you talk to me at all, I don't really know. In like our Discord or whatever, I don't know the Magic story very. Like I get the gist of it. I know what Planeswalkers are. I know who the characters are. But like I don't really know much about what's going on. I play cards for the art.
I don't either. I like there's entire streams that are dedicated to the whole Magic, the storyline and the history, and I'm just like, okay. Yeah.
But what does that do for me mechanically? That's what I want to know. So Double Masters 22 introducing textured foils. It had these absurdly expensive collector boxes you could buy. That somehow still managed to, on average, net you value.
Like if you bought a box,
Yes.
you usually did pretty well, especially right off the bat. Because I mean, I've been following the value on Double Masters, and it's crept down considerably. So if you're trying to pick up some of those cards that were absurdly expensive, like Ren and 6, Imperial Seal, they're now under $100. Some like I think even Ren and 6, like even a borderless foil is like $80-$90.
Wow.
I think the two top cards there, the number one is the foil etched Imperial Seal, followed by the textured Ren and 6.
Yeah, the etched foils only being in the collector boosters there too, which is like, which is different than some of the previous, like Commander Legends. You got etched foils in regular packs.
Yeah, you can get those in regular packs. Yep.
Yeah. Double Masters 2022 was, I guess, I'm trying to think about what to say about this set, but this was actually what you could pretty easily call, I think you could also pretty safely call this a cash grab. However, it's the kind where the players actually were generally pretty fine with it, I think, right? Was that your take on the perception? Yeah,
because I mean, even at like $90 a pack for collectors, we sold them. I mean, I think we're almost sold out.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the difference being that there's a bunch of cards that people want in here and have been waiting for, actually, in some cases. Right. And the textured foils, great addition to the game's arsenal of things it can do, because this card I showed earlier, that's a textured foil too. Like it's not, it's something that is completely within the realm of doing in Wizards. So it's like, why haven't they been doing it? So I'm glad they started to. It was a good set. Although I think that if there's any con to it, it's just that it was the like 5th booster release of the year, let alone secret rares and stuff. And it was continuing the trend of making things more and more expensive, which didn't end until like once we got to the end of the year, we had the coup de grace on that.
Yep.
But at least these ones are real cards, so there's that.
Right, and it was that's exactly the thing, is that they kept on moving the goalposts every time we had one of these releases.
Yeah, and I think that's something where at some point I feel like there's got to be a little bit of relenting happening. I'm actually someone I've always advocated. I like the idea of collector boosters. I think collector boosters are a good thing to have in the game. Yep. But I really think the players need to. Wizards is very adamant that the products they make are not for every player, which I think that is true in some cases. And I've come around on Secret Lairs where I'm not picking them up as often as I was right away.
Sure.
And I've started to understand that, like, if there's a single card I want from a Secret Lair batch, I can probably just find that single later. It won't really be a big deal. Like, that's fine, right. Or I don't even really need it necessarily. Like, whatever. Like, it's all good. I bought 2 Nilsham Secret Lairs, by the way, because he's my favorite artist. So like, sometimes Secret Lair is for me.
So the Frank Frazetta?
Yes. Art. Oh, that one's for you.
So
Absolutely.
I was swearing off. I'm like, I'm not giving Wizards any more money directly, and then they come out with that. I'm like, damn you. Yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool though, for people who like grew up with that, all Frazetta's art on D&D stuff and everything like that. So, Savage Sword of Conan. That was
nice.
My uncle collected those. And so some of the first comic books I ever read were Savage Sword of Conan, and it was Frank Frazetta, Boris Vallejo, and those artists, because at that point in time, they were the magazine style comic books from the 70s, so they weren't under the comic ratings authority.
So they got to get away with whatever they wanted.
So you had, boobs and other things.
Whoa, family-friendly podcast.
But I mean, I just love the art. I mean, it was just absolutely fantastic. I think Riccardo Federucci. He's a current comic book artist, and his stuff is very much like Frazetta and Vallejo, just beautiful. I mean, he does some Batman and some other stuff, and it's just amazing art. It's reminiscent of like that old school heavy metal, even like Soriyama type of art, which is like, I'm a big heavy metal fan. I've got the first 4 years. My dad collected it from 77 to 85, and he gave them to me. So I'm like, oh yeah, all right, sweet,
Nice.
But I love that kind of that 70s era fantasy and sci-fi art I just love it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, so like I've come around on Secret Lairs. Like, clearly, you understand too. It's like, what, if they're going to come out with the one for you, then that's great. That's
right.
A pickup, but you really don't need to be grabbing every single secret lair out there. But
no.
But I think when it comes down to it, if we're trying to, so let's just take a look at Wizard's statement face value, which is that, like, not every product we make is for every player. Okay.
Yep.
Or every product we make is for different players, or however you want to take this.
Yep.
How do we judge when we look at a product that, if you're Dana and you sit down and you want to judge a product and figure out, is Wizards asking me to spend money on this? Is this for me? In my opinion, there's only two metrics you can use to determine if that's the case. One of them is, what is the content? What are the cards? Who is this being marketed towards? And am I in that demographic?
Yep.
And that would, I'm just going to sort of bury the lead a little bit here. That is like probably the one that should be the one we look at, right?
Yes.
Because
yes.
What else would we look at? The other one is like, can I afford this product? Right? That's the only other thing that you can really divide who your buyers would be then, because, like, if cards are out the window, then the only thing we can think about is like, well, I guess, like, can I afford it? Then is like the question, and the problem is so to create my proof here, I guess, let's say, given that the the ideal scenario would be that the cards are going to be the factor that we look at when we're trying to determine if a set's for us. Then if that would not be the case, then we would be in a world where all we're doing is looking at the price of a product and determining if it's something that we should buy, and what sort of system are we in then? Well, we're in a system where players are effectively sort of casted into what they can play based on how the size of their wallet, what they can afford, Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. It's always kind of been with Magic, but it's increased. The monetary gatekeeping, as it were, is, I think, increased over time, and part of that, and I mean, this we can go back, we can reach over into arena land, but the fact that standard in paper is dead. I mean, I had a guy come in for the first time last Friday saying, "Hey, you got standard running tonight?" I'm like, I can, but you're the only person here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I bring that up specifically because, like, I don't think anybody wants to be in a scenario where we're just saying, like, well, you can either play the format you can afford, or you can play or you can not play the game or whatever,
right.
So if we're going to try and then, like, use that judgment, like, okay, well, like, how can we deem if a set that's released is for us, like. Looking at Double Masters 2022, let's say then that let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say, like, okay, well, then we'll be able to determine if a set is for us by the cards alone, because we don't want to live in the world where it's like they either just like the world we're talking about, by the way, is 30th anniversary set, is the 30A. 30A is the set where it's like you can either afford it or you can't. That's how if you want to know if 30A is for you, it's I think they're not. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here to talk about it, but I think they're not coy about that at all. It's like that was their direct response to 30A, was like, can you afford $1,000 booster packs? Then no, it's not for you. Like, which can hurt a little bit. So let's look at, say, Double Masters 22. So Dana, is there any Magic player that Double Masters 2022 isn't for? based on the cards alone?
Based on the cards alone, no. I mean, I think it's got a little bit of everything, I mean, it's got Commander stuff in it. It's got Legacy stuff in it. It's got modern stuff in it.
You'd have to be a dedicated Standard player, right? That's like, you're like, if you're like, I only play Standard.
Yeah.
Then you would skip 22. So we can then say that, so establishing my proof again, we can then say because of that Double Masters 2022 is for, well, given what you just said, 99% of the player base, basically.
Right.
Most Standard players are just playing an arena, really.
Right. Eternal formats.
Yep. So in that case, then, Dana, we've now established that you cannot determine if Double Masters 2022 is for you based on the cards, because it's pretty much for everybody. Then that's where we start to get the concern about pricing, right? Because but it's a very expensive set to buy cards from.
Yes.
And I think that's where, looking at it from that framing, we see why players can have an issue with it. It's obviously was a very exciting set because most players wanted it. They wanted the cards in it, but it was unfortunate then they produced a set that most people wanted to get cards from. And the only ways to buy it were you could buy draft boosters, but even draft boosters were pretty expensive for the set.
They're still $17.
Yeah. And then collector's boosters are $90 a pack or whatever.
Yeah, I think they're at an all-time low at 60 something.
Wow.
Right now. So I mean, and I won't necessarily say that's affordable because it's ridiculous,
Yeah. And I guess ultimately that's the point I want to make. I wanted to use 2022 as a framing device to kind of look through and think about these lenses by which we can look at them and look at the different sets and determine because I think if you can easily look at Neon Dynasty, New Capenna, Dominaria, United Brothers War, who are they for? Well, that's the question is do you care about the cards in the set? And I think that's how sets should be. If their goal is to make products that are not for everybody, because they're not draining your wallet because you don't have to buy everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they follow that up with we're making multiple sets in the year that are producing very expensive packs and you do actually want everything in here, that is where they're actually kind of causing an issue for players and then starting to price players out of the game a little bit, because they're actually putting stuff that people are like, I want to buy that, but you kind of won't let me because you keep putting out products that I want to buy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, they're gatekeeping themselves. I mean, I don't know, their marketing. I mean, if we look at legacy and vintage players, I mean, if you're going to play that format legitimately, you got to have either you have to have had a library of cards from back in the day, or you got to have a substantial amount of money to play the format. I mean, yeah, there's some fringe tier decks that aren't going to cost you a down payment on a car, but for the most, I mean, if you want to be competitive, if you want to play in that format competitively, it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
And we have modern. I mean, you can get into modern and have a legitimate deck like 8-whack or 12-whack goblins, or even elves, and to be relatively competitive. And it's going to be it's going to be affordable, I think, to most people who are playing collectible card games, because it's within that $100 to $300 range to get all the cards you need. And maybe I'm wrong in my estimation of that value. But that's kind of where I put things. If you can get into it for $100 and play it, then that's relatively affordable. And
I think one downfall that we found from Magic sort of pushing Standard largely into Arena for play, I don't know if it's intentionally Wizards' intention to do that, but based on the way they've pushed older formats and they've pushed paper Commander, and also I do think to some degree because of the pandemic happening and everything too.
Yes.
It's Standard has largely become the format that you just kind of play on Arena and otherwise you don't worry about it. And I do think unfortunately because of that, Standard had the big benefit to Standard for people who play card games and don't play Magic. A lot of players who play card games and don't play Magic don't enjoy that when card games introduce a rotation system. Standard's always been the rotating, currently
Yep.
legal, currently most recent sets are legal format. And the benefit to that is that where Dana says like, well, it's like an affordable game to play where you pay $100 to $300 for a single deck or whatever. It's like, for some card games, that would be a pretty absurd amount, actually.
Sure. Yeah.
But Standard was always the format where, unless you're talking about the tippy top tier deck or whatever, like the number one deck where that would usually hit that range, you could get in on a slightly lower tier deck for less than 100 usually.
Yeah.
Especially if you had a stock of just like lands that were like dual type lands that they were just like reprinting or whatever at the time.
Yeah.
Pain lands for a while, that kind of stuff where it would like kind of helped you get into just building whatever decks you needed to. But we, now that means you talk about like gatekeeping and ease of access to the game. It's like the most affordable format to play on a competitive level is not being pushed at all.
Right. Yeah.
And what does that do to our player base?
No, that is, you probably put that in the best, I think, like just frame that the best way you can, is that the most accessible part of our game, we're not pushing it, and except in the digital realm. And again, that's then they play the free. I mean, I know you can play Arena for free and you can draft for free by completing, daily events and weekly events and things like that. But I mean, they're after your money on that. They are. And buying,
Yes.
Specific currencies, and that don't necessarily match the dollar amount. So you might have to buy 2 if you want to get this one thing. And then the randomized wild cards. I mean, it is what freemium is, that, and they all, almost every game follows that because it makes money. I mean, that's, and at the bottom line, that's why these companies exist.
Yep. And we can't get past that just being part of it. But I do think it's interesting just to look at, I think it would be helpful if people framed how they're approaching every set. If we're going to take Wizards at their word and say, their goal is to not make products that every single person wants to buy, and that's why they're not like draining your wallet a little bit. I have no problem giving them the benefit of the doubt that there is a goal there. But I think what we can do is like look at the sets and go like, okay, well, are you achieving that with X set, with Y set, with Z set? And again, I think the standard sets are really great in general. I actually love the way they do standard sets right now. Honestly, like across the board, I think other than like, I think they should really continue to work on their like special treatments and chase cards and stuff.
Yep.
I like the standard sets. I like the commander only cards that are put into the commander decks. Actually, that's my favorite part of spoiler season. Every part of spoiler season is what are the new commander deck cards? Because they're always like stapling weird abilities together and like making really wild stuff. I just like, those are my favorite things, for sure. But design wise, they're, I think they're really great and stuff. So I have no problem with that, but it is some of the other products. It is Commander Legends, Infinity Double Masters, that kind of stuff. Like when you add it on to the standard sets and then your secret layer here and there and everything, that's where it starts to like, I feel like weigh you down a little bit.
Yeah. It is. It's definitely wallet fatigue, and one thing which is interesting, this is just something I noticed when we had our first RCQ, the one for Atlanta earlier this year, and we did it in standard just because we're like, hey, let's fire off some standard. Well,
yeah.
One thing that's interesting is like back in the day when, you put a standard deck together, you bought your packs and that out of these various sets, and I'm like, I've got a collection of these cards. Well, one thing that we noticed, and I think it would be something that we'd see more of if standard were still a thing, is there's a number of players who are like, oh yeah, this came in my draft pack, but it's a commander only card. And so when we're doing deck checks, we're looking at them like, oh, dude, sorry, man, you can't play that. That's a commander card.
They don't even they can't keep up with the system with like what's even legal and standard and they're releasing those now.
And that was,
I can't help but think though that would be like sort of, if standard were more popular, that would be more common knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not, because nobody's playing standard unless they're playing on the computer, and you've got your cards. It's telling you which cards are legal and which cards aren't. So
yeah, that's interesting. That's I do hope they continue to, I hope they think about, you know, how to make sure your players can access the game competitively, because you can't build a competitive, that's another, like, you want to wonder why games like Flesh and Blood and a lot of other smaller card games are able to start to build these competitive systems, because it doesn't cost $300 to build a base deck, like a budget deck to get into like a format or whatever, you know. It's like, you know, that would be several high level competitive decks in multiple games.
And you know, and you know, I'm coming from a guy who plays Magic, and so you're enlightening me on the cost of these, you know. And I think I've heard that, you know, other places saying, hey, you know, the Magic, it's just so expensive, I can play this game, which I find just as fun and has just as many cool mechanics, and it's not going to break the bank. So
yeah, it is, you know, it is different if you're just a Magic player and you haven't experienced that. I'm not going to say it's like an all grass is greener thing, right? Because again, Magic's the biggest game in the world. It affords a lot of benefits from being how big it is. And you got things like Arena, which some of the monetization issues that they've been working on aside, but they also, some of which they're, like you said, they're just not going to work on. It's like just part and parcel of it. But that aside, it is one of the better digital TCG platforms out there.
I mean,
from what you have access to.
I've played it, you know, and especially comparing it to MTGO. I mean, MTGO, you almost have to have an engineering degree just to understand it in its Windows 95 formatting, you know, whereas Arena, you've got, you know, it's very accessible. You know, you can run through the tutorial pieces. You know, it's got some exciting graphics for certain cards, which I think is really neat. You know,
I still get like, I get scared every time I use, with the Realm Cloak Giant, the Wrath side, the adventure side of the adventure Wrath spell that becomes a giant, right? Whatever.
Right.
Like every time I use that card, I play it, and then I get startled when the big hand comes in and grabs it. I'm like, what's on my phone? Oh, it's just the giant that I just literally just played.
And the fact that that's available on mobile. And it's optimized on mobile. I think that's really amazing. You know, that you can have that same experience.
It was a game changer. I actually play, other than when I'm streaming Arena now, I mostly just play mobile. There are a few bugs, like I get some crashes and stuff sometimes, but like it's good enough, you know, like where I'm able to, it's replaced any other digital, most digital games that I play on my mobile gaming is pretty much just Arena now. Cause it's like, it works. So,
and I've heard that from multiple people. Like, I've eliminated all mobile games off my phone because I found out I was spending far too much money on that freemium aspect. So
that'll happen.
Like, nope, get it out of there. Get it out of there.
Okay, so yeah, we're definitely going long here, but I think there's just been so much good stuff to talk about. We're gonna go and push ahead and just kind of close out the year with a couple of items. We're gonna talk about Dominaria United real quick. A return to Dominaria was fine.
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, we got to see some cool stuff. Some, you know, some harkening back to Urza and Mishra and Ashnod and those cards that we remember, at least that I remember from those original sets back in the day, and you know, giving them new treatments. You know, and there's some really good stuff, I think, in there. I mean, you know, and then you got like Urza. Well, I guess this would go to Brothers War, but you got like Urza and Mishra, you know, as young kids, as adults, and then as old cranky dudes, you know.
Yeah, that would be Brothers War. Dominaria, and I think I actually Dominaria, I've cooled on a little bit, but I still did really enjoy that sealed format in particular. I found really fun. Because Domain was actually quite powerful. Having all 5 land types, the Domain cards were legitimately good in that format. Joda's, I think it was called Joda's Codex, which became like a pay 1 tap draw card if you had Domain. Artifact that was, if you ever play Sealed Dominaria United, you open that card, you're just see if you can make 5 color work, because and even if you can't, if you can make 3 or 4, play that card. It's so good.
If you can draw a card for less than 3 mana, you're doing well.
Yes. Yeah. And Kicker, you know, like I'm an older school player, so Kicker is like right up my alley. It's my thing. It's like, just make the spell slightly better if I pay a little more for it. I love that. It's always good. But yeah, like ultimately it's like, I don't think it was a bad release. I don't think it was.
No.
I think it was okay. It was solid.
I thought it was kind of cool that they, like you had the chance to open an original Legends card in a collector pack, which I thought was
cute.
Cool.
Yep.
I opened 3. None of them were good. And everyone else I've known, like nobody I know has opened like anything that's been like very good. But I mean, it's cool that they're there and they're legitimate old cards. It's that kind of nostalgia to attach it to a card set that's based on nostalgia. It fits. It fits.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. It was a decent set. It introduced actually. I really currently enjoy. There's a standard deck that I really love playing. That's Esper Legends that has a good mix of cards from everything throughout the year. But Dominaria United really powered that with Urtai and Ritadrabik and stuff. So right now in particular, I am enjoying a number of the cards in that set because that makes that deck really pretty sweet.
No, legit.
I'm going to jump right from that because I don't think there's like a ton to say about that.
We got Liliana the Veil reprint. That was cool.
Yes, and that is a great reprint. That card is. It turns out it's still good. Oh, I guess let's say one more thing. Shieldred is a hell of a card. Holy cow!
Like especially looking at New Capenna and seeing was it Urabrask?
Yeah. Poor Urabrask.
And because like. Like the original Urabrask is actually pretty cool, but the new one was
kind of stinky, honestly.
And the new Jin Gataxius in Kamigawa was pretty cool. Not
a little expensive, but pretty cool, yeah.
And not as like game breaking as the original Jin.
No,
was.
And I don't think anyone was asking for that, to be honest.
Right.
We've got enough of that nonsense.
But yeah, Shieldred, I mean, it's very solid card. I got my play set, so I'm happy.
I'm just playing in an arena, so I'm good. I have so many mythic wild cards, you have no idea.
and the stained glass treatment, I think was really cool. It was
a beautiful treatment on cards.
Yep, the stained glass lands. The one I loved the kind of the nebulous lands. I think those are from Theros.
Yes.
Beyond.
Yeah, honestly, these replace those for me.
Yeah, me too.
I like them. They're the same concept, but just a little bit better, I think. Brothers War. I really like Brothers War though, as a set.
Yeah, it's got some really cool mechanics. Brought back some really cool mechanics. I do like the prototype mechanic. I think that's neat. Especially, I mean it's interesting. I mean, going a little off the rails and seeing how it plays in Commander. When you got prototype, because you got a colorless card, but if you're playing for the prototype cost, now it's that color.
Yes,
so
it does, and that doesn't matter. Here's another thing. Here's a tidbit for you. This is an arena only tidbit. I'm sorry, I keep going. I play a decent amount of arena.
Yeah.
But I did not know what happened until I used it. This was an interaction. Despite being a judge for a long time, I looked at these cards and I'm like, I am not sure how these work. I'm just going to have to play it and find out. So there's a number of cards in arena that perpetually grant things to cards.
Yes.
Cards that like perpetually give a card +1/+1 is something that happens on a few different effects. So I didn't know what would happen when I used that on a prototype card. Is that effect only the regular mana cost? Is the prototype, or not mana cost, only the original power toughness? Is the prototype power toughness a separate, like it becomes this and it doesn't matter what the like base power toughness is?
Sure.
Like it turns out it affects both. So
okay. That's what I would assume.
That's what I hoped when I threw Steel Seraph into my Clement deck, which is just a deck that's all about, I'm going to play a 2-drop every single game that makes all of my creatures way above the curve, and I'm just going to stomp you with them. And yeah, it turns out Steel Seraph at a 4/4 for 3 mana is really good.
Yeah.
Pretty spicy. So that just an interesting tidbit. But yeah, like the thing that I like about Brothers War is that it harkens back in feel a little bit to, and maybe this will be weird to some people, but I'll explain it, to Rise of the Eldrazi, which is my all-time favorite set. And it's because it has a number of mechanics that are about building and pushing the game longer and using sort of more like haymaker bombs at the end, and decks have access to more, in like in Rise format, limited format, getting Ulamog's Crusher was like, yeah, this is like going to be one of my, like, it's a common. That's one of my ways to end the game. And you're just going to build up your, Pathrazor Ulamog. Yep. Another great one. Yeah. Or of course, if you open a Mythic Eldrazi, you're like, let's do this. We're going to go to town. But it feels like that a little bit of Power Stones and these prototype creatures, and like there's a number of different mechanics in there from like unearth effects that are trying to give you value later in the game for something you played earlier, to the prototype ones that are asking you can hold this for late game and Power Stones to build up. It's like it's just got a little bit of that. Let's make the game go a little bit longer, play a little bit slower built into it, and it feels to me like. Like again, the story's like what, like I know I get the Brothers War idea of the story, and I appreciate the like relevance of that, but like I'm mechanically, for me, I'm like looking at the set and going like, this is like, it's like, what if they took Mirrodin and made it Rise of the Eldrazi, and that's Brothers War to me. Okay, yeah, that's a good analog. I like that. Yeah, and for me, it just like it really works. It just feels it feels really fun. I love that set. Yeah, I mean, because you got cards like Cityscape Leveler, which feels kind of like an Eldrazi. Oh, yeah. That card's been blown up a little bit, too. People have been figuring that one out. That's a spicy one. And one thing they did in Brothers War that they have finally introduced, which other card games have been putting out already, but like, again, Magic traditionally behind the curve, it seems, but they're there now, is serialized cards as collectibles. So... Dana, how do you feel about the serialized cards edition? I think they're cool. I think it's a worthwhile chase. I've known several people who've opened some really spicy ones. Mox Amber, the Ramos Dragon Engine, Wormcoil Engine. It seems like they're more common than actually pulling a Shattered Glass Transformer foil. Yeah, the whole Transformer things really surprised me. I didn't realize like how valuable those shattered foil things would be. So that's crazy. Yeah, it was one of our same players who has a very large collection and buys lots of stuff. Actually, did pull a Shattered Glass Megatron. Wow. And I'm just like, you should sell that. Nope, it's going to my collection. I'm like, party on. All right. What's your take on this question? What's going to hold value better, Shattered Glass Optimus Prime or Neon Pink Hidetsugu? I want to say probably the Neon Ink. It's still in the Magic universe, because even though I'm kind of I don't really care, like as far as Universes Beyond, it doesn't affect me either way. I can say I bought all the collector 40K decks because I love 40K and it's in Magic form. I mean, it's like win-win for me. But I think all in all, I think the print rate is probably less for those Neon Inks, just for as many as I've seen, because I have seen like at least several Transformers, but I've seen more, or I've seen fewer of the ink, of the actual Neon Inked cards. So I think what's really interesting about the Transformers is that we've seen them go to Universes Beyond for like specific IPs that people love quite a bit in Secret Lairs already. Yeah. Which are, print on demand kind of situations over a period of pre-sale time or whatever. This is the first time they've taken, I mean, they did Godzilla, but that was like not like this exactly. Right. They've sort of made a chase card, I guess I should say, in a booster set. They made chase cards in a booster set of an IP that is very beloved by people. It's really the first time we've seen that. Right. So far. And I think the fact that it's Hasbro is that it had to have been Transformers. Yeah. Well, yes, absolutely. But I do think that maybe weighs into the debate between the value of those potential long-term holds, maybe more than you could be giving it credit for, because I do maybe wonder, Magic collectors are going to like Magic cards, right? But a Transformers collector can also like a rare Magic card, whereas a Magic collectors are the only ones who will really care about Magic cards. No, that's like, pool's a little more open, So yeah, that's a great perspective. Again, I got to give you credit, man. That's
that's a really good perspective, and that's simply because you've got just a wider focus, where I'm kind of stuck in my little magic cave. So.
Well, no, it's like I'm not like seeking praise, but like I think it's interesting to talk about, because if we're gonna look at, I was just realizing as we're talking about the entire year, we're like, here's the collectible from this set, here's the collectible from this set, here's the and you got to look back and think like, well, like if I'm like someone who's like holding on, I was thinking also about like our local players who are like pulling this and that and everything. It's like, well, what if you wanted to. If you were tired of just looking at everything in a binder, and you're like, okay, how do I take my binder and turn it into the most value to hold on to? Like, what should I be trading for? I was thinking about like, I wonder if you'd trade that shattered glass for a neon ink or whatever. And I was like, well, I wonder what you should maybe hold on to. And
no, that's it's a good take.
The one thing we need to see is really just like, we need a couple more months probably of pull data on Brothers War, just to like see if anything starts to sort of like. We usually find as like, as more of the neon ink started to get open, the price started to dip on those a bit. And I haven't been watching the Transformers to see if like Brothers War Shattered Glass are like holding or dipping or anything.
I think initially they had some really high price points for the foils.
They did.
And I still think like your Megatron, Optimus Prime, Soundwave, and Ultra Magnus are like your top 4. Because those are your multicolor, basically commander cards. I would say, they're all holding prices of $1,000 or above per card.
That's so nuts. But see, like you can give me the credit, but like I actually would not have told you that at all going into the set. I've been like, yeah, like whatever, like it's a Transformers card, but that's my like personal bias perspective, where I like never was really into Transformers as a kid. So like
sure.
So I would have totally called that one wrong initially, but we got hindsight behind us, so that's good. So yeah, we'll see how Brothers War continues to shape up, but I think it was a cool set. I enjoyed the limited environment quite a bit, and it seems to have some potential to impact various formats, and will from prototype cards, which are kind of interesting, like blink enablers in certain decks and everything, to these like unearth cards.
Unearth.
Provide
super good Mishra.
Value, graveyard value, and Mishra.
Mishra, the rare version of Mishra. He's the one who gives all your permanents, ward, discard, or sacrifice a permanent.
I was getting sick of playing that guy. I was getting sick of playing him in the Brothers War event on Arena, where you had to play Urza versus Mishra.
Oh, sure.
I'm so sick of like, if I target anything, I have to sack a permanent.
I mean, that's just. I've seen some plays in Standard with that, just in some weird brews, watch it on streams, and I watched a Commander game the other night where one of our players was running that Mishra, and just devastating.
Yeah, I believe that. I definitely believe that. He also gives your artifacts on Earth, right? So like you can do some like that's a powerful. And I think that's so cool. I really do appreciate that they took some of the most iconic characters of Magic and they just gave them like multiple new cards. Like something here is going to be dope. When I was playing that Brothers War event, it was actually on stream just the other night on our Wednesday night Arena streams on Twitch. Sorry, I have to like plug it a little bit.
No, absolutely. That's what you got to do.
But I was playing the Brothers War event specifically, and my goal specifically was I was playing the Urza deck that could meld, and I refused to win the game unless I was melding the Planeswalker. And I one of those games went for I think damn near an hour. It was a grind. I had gotten down my 100 card Historic Brawl deck. I got it down to 20 cards roughly the first time. The first time is the key word, because I melded and then I used the abilities, and then they whipped together some combo or whatever and took my Planeswalker out, and I was like, well, I didn't win the game. So I then casted the Aftermath side of the whatever card that shuffles our graveyards into our decks, and we each draw 7 again. And I'm like, commit to memory, I think is the memory side. Okay. I was like, well, all right, we'll try again. And then I think it took me to like 40 or 50 cards in my deck before I melded again, and then my opponent conceded the game. Finally.
Well done.
And I was like, well done, but it's all good. I melded. I melded and I won. That's all that matters.
No, I mean, that's, it's a lot of times, I've got a number of players who are really good players, and they like to throw together some jank, and it's like, what is your goal to come in tonight? And they're like, I just want to do this thing. As long as I can do that, I don't care if I win a game, but as long as I can do that, I'm happy. I'm like, I like that. I really enjoy that.
That is specifically how I play Historic Brawl. I'm actually going to be publishing some deck videos on the channel pretty soon here, where I've been sort of honing what I want to get out of like doing some videos for Arena. And specifically, I've decided that the way I like to play Historic Brawl is to find one really specific thing I like to do, and then just build a deck then like sort of a weird kind of a niche thing, and then build a deck that achieves that as efficiently as possible. Because Historic Brawl is actually a kind of a cutthroat format a lot of the time.
Sure, yeah.
A lot of decks are just going like into the north ramp stuff into like some just obscene like card or what. Like I had one earlier today that was like enter the infinite into omniscience into like whatever. Like okay, like you got me, like, good job, whatever. And recently the one I've been playing is a Johnny Sleeper Agent.
Okay.
And I don't attack you. I'm going to win with 10 poison counters. That's the only way. The only way to win. And you would be surprised how brutal that deck actually is.
Oh, I believe it. That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess if you're watching the channel, you can look forward to that too. Some of those will be coming out. I don't know how it'll do, but I'm excited just to get some videos out for those because it's been a lot of fun. So last release I want to talk about, Warhammer 40k Commander decks. You mentioned them already.
Sure.
My take on these, I'm going to start right away. Just jump right in. Best release of the year. That's my take.
I think I can't really disagree with you. I'm trying to be objective because of my love for 40k, but one thing that they just nailed was the mechanics and the theming of all the cards they put in there. It was just, I mean, that's the kind of development and research I want to go into every Magic set if they can do the same thing they did with 40k, because they did it so well.
I totally agree with you. And actually, the reason specifically that I say it's the best release of the year is partially because of that, because they took a theme and they nailed it. If the upcoming Lord of the Rings set does that, oh, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be a happy person with that. I know they're taking like some creative liberties with like their like character appearances and everything, which is great. Like I'm totally for that and everything, but like I'm not saying like it's got to be like you got to have Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn. I'm gonna be mad. Which is like
right.
Like what, that's not. I don't care about that. But like I definitely want the theme to come through on the feel of the cards and but they nailed it for the 40k release. And specifically, the thing that I love about this was that effectively what in my opinion, the 40k release was a second Commander Legends set for the year.
Yeah.
However, you just bought the decks and you were done.
Yeah.
And they never do things like that, really. That's like this, like it's very, very novel to do it this way.
Because you had like what, 170 some new cards?
Yeah.
Split between the four decks. Yeah, that's essentially like half to three-quarter of a set. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just got to buy the decks. If you didn't even want the whole set, you just bought the thing you wanted. Yeah. You want to talk about, earlier we're saying like, okay, cash grabs, like if you want to figure out something to cash grab, is this good to the players? Is it pro players? Is it player focused? The Commander 40k decks, I mean, it doesn't really get much more player friendly than just saying, have the card you want.
Yep.
They can't always do that because a TCG loses that. There's a big difference between how people engage with the hobby of collectible card games and how they engage with the hobby of like living card games and board game type things like that. There's a lot less, it's subject for an entire new thing, but a lot less investment that goes into that from psychologically speaking and emotionally. As a release that just happens every now and then, just doing a set now and then where people can just kind of buy the product that they're looking for and get the things they want. That is a way that the players' wallet fatigue can sort of be lessened in that way. They don't feel you don't have to pay as much as you would pay for a single like collector booster box or whatever, and you get the entire set. I mean, that's that's great.
I think that is an absolutely great example of what they could do right.
Yeah, 100%. I think if we're going to look at any product from the year and say like this highlights Magic at its best, I think it's Warhammer 40K. Even if with those collector sets that you got, the collector ones, I wasn't unfortunately unable to get. I just couldn't shell out for the collector ones at the time.
Right.
And at first I was like kind of bummed. I was like, man, like it really sucks that I can't get the foils of everything. But then I just thought, oh, I don't care. Yeah. It's like, well, whatever. Like, fine, I can still get the cards, and I'm happy that I can just have the cards.
And to be honest, they're sitting in the box, and that's where those surge foils are sitting in the box. And they're sitting up on my sealed Magic shelf display. I've got like the Commander anthologies and like Game Night and those guys.
Yeah.
But I bought the regular ones too, sleeved them all up. I made a couple minor changes, but they had to be within theme.
Sure.
To each deck, like 1 or 2 cards, I think at 3 maybe at most, and usually it was a little bit of beefing up the mana base a little bit.
Yeah.
But other than that, I kept them as 40K as I could, and just so I can like, hey guys, let's play a game of Commander, and I said we'll each play a 40K deck. So
yeah, and the fact that this can come out and like market to 40K players who were interested in Magic, like that's the big benefit of Universes Beyond, is like Magic's ability to outreach a little more to people who weren't necessarily interested in Magic lore, and get them kind of invested in the game a little bit, where they might start to look at the other, the rest of the game.
Yeah, this is pretty fun. What else do we got? Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you and I are on the same page about that. It was an excellent release. I would love to continue to see if this is how they continue to do Universes Beyond. I'm happy, but like honestly, I would like to see them the next D&D set maybe should be done this way instead. Like I think that would be so cool just to be able to like get into some like Ravenloft or something where
Dark Sun.
Yeah, it just gets there's I think there's a lot of good options, but like I think that would continue to be a great way to just like again outreach to other to people, like, because like it's one thing to say, hey, do you like 40K? Well, here's some randomized packs for you to buy, and you might like them, and you might like what you get, you might not. I don't know. It's so much. It's just it's a very player friendly thing to do, and that's we could use maybe a little more of that. I think
that. I think to put a cap on the year, I think that is probably the best thing that Wizards could do.
Yes,
absolutely, is curate something. Is keep on that curation of whether it's Commander decks, things like that. I mean, that even falls into Jumpstart to a degree, because I mean, Jumpstart, each pack is curated to a specific theme.
I like Jumpstart too. I'm not going to talk much about 2022. It's Jumpstart. It's more Jumpstart. It's fine, but like
more themes.
Jumpstart's a fun product. It's something that I do recommend to new players. Just like just grab a couple of those and slam them together. You'll have a fun deck. You legitimately will just enjoy exploring the mechanics in your deck, and it doesn't cost you very much. So
$10.
Yeah.
Bada boom.
Unfortunately, the thing that capstoned our year was Magic 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
So, I've talked a lot about this. I've talked a lot about this with some people. I've talked a lot on our streams about it too, if you've been on any of those. But like 30th anniversary, it comes down to this for me. This is a celebration. This is marketed as a celebration for the players for 30th anniversary, but I don't feel like much of it actually was one that the players were able to engage in celebrating. It's kind of like you guys can watch other people have a celebration or watch us celebrate the game or something without really being able to engage yourself. There were a series of promos that were given to stores. Those were fine. I don't have any problem with the 30th anniversary promos that were given to stores. The other products sort of fell flat in a couple of ways. There's a 30th anniversary secret lair that came out. It had 30 different cards that had a 30% chance of being foil. And
I purchased that.
Yep, which is great. The problem with that was that I don't know if they were just trying to be cute or whatever, but you could also purchase only up to 30 of them when you ordered them. And that caused a lot of people with online stores and expendable money and whatever to just buy out the limited print run of those.
Yeah, because they weren't print to order like they normally are. They had to set them out and yeah.
And in my personal opinion, if you're going to try to produce a product that you want the average Joe player, Billy Magic player, Cindy Magic player to be able to pick up and go, wow, I love Magic, I'm going to pick that up. Your first mistake is making it so that a store can just buy 30 copies of it before Billy gets a chance to buy one. Cindy gets a chance to buy one. So I definitely, I was actually quite behind the product until that happened. And I saw that and I thought that doesn't feel right to me. And I do wish they had gone about that a little differently. Otherwise it's a cool product. But it's, it was a way that felt like it was supposed to be a way for you to join in the 30th anniversary celebration, but it was actually very difficult to join in the 30th anniversary celebration because of that.
Yeah, it seems like that's their theme.
Well, and then let's talk about 30A, huh? 30A is the 30th anniversary reprint, effectively, of Beta, but with a slot for current modern frames of cards like Black Lotus, all the way down to, like Thought Lace or like whatever, like
Pure Lace, Death Lace.
Yep. And importantly, MSRP is $250 per single booster pack of cards that have that do not have a Magic card back. They have a 30th anniversary card back. They are not legal cards.
Right.
Furthermore, they were sold in two ways. One of which was they were given out as a surprise to people who attended the 30th anniversary event when they bought an exorbitantly priced ticket.
Yeah, the Black Lotus VIP.
Yep. Second, so three ways. Second, they were given to stores at incredibly limited quantities, to the point where a lot of stores didn't even sell them. They just
vaulted them. I mean, if you weren't a premium store, you got one box. If you were a premium store, you got three.
Yeah. And so, again, if we're going to keep, I'm going to bring this question up each time. So for the VIP at the 30th anniversary celebration that you had to travel to Las Vegas to go to, was that a way a player, Billy Magic player, could get in on 30th anniversary? No, it wasn't. No. Because Billy was going to have to spend minimum like $1,500 for the weekend just before he eats food.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the store is getting the 30A packs, one box to regular stores, 3 boxes to premium, that a lot of stores just could do what they wanted with, but why would they even sell them when they don't have any, basically?
Yeah.
And who would they sell them to? Probably not Billy.
No.
So is that a way Billy can get in, or Cindy can get in?
No.
Nope. Then the final way was a limited release online, which was probably the best way to get in on the set, which we're not even getting into. There's a question up in the air as to whether or not it actually even sold out. There's plenty of stuff online you can look into if you're curious about that.
Oh, yes. Yep.
I have my opinion. Dana has his opinion. Everyone has their own opinion on what happened there. But regardless, they were available for a period of time, and then an announcement said they were no longer available. Could you get it on that? Yeah, it sounds like you could have, probably. But then again, you have to then go online and spend $1,000. And you couldn't buy a single pack. You'd buy $1,000 per box.
Yeah.
Probably a limit of some kind, but I think
it was 5. Yeah, 5 per order.
Yeah. So sorry, you can only spend $5,000 on these proxies. So,
or get a used car, but whatever.
Yeah. Or 10 PS5s.
About as easy to get.
Yeah. So, when it comes down to it, okay, who's this for? Well, honestly, we can use our metric earlier. Is this for everybody? From the cards alone, probably not, because do you need a Black Lotus proxy? No, not most people. I would say. This is the one product where I think like one of the products where I think their metric, like we don't make things for everybody to buy. So if you couldn't buy it, that's okay. Yeah. That's kind of true here, I guess. But I will say that one thing was they started off they started off marketing the Celebration as a lot of players have never, this is like a paraphrase line from their article. Like players have never had a chance to open a Black Lotus and now they can. Well,
if they're independently wealthy, yes.
Yeah. And, it's like, it's not like you're going to your local store and everyone's like, okay, we all get to buy a pack and crack it open. And like there are ways to do this celebration where it is a celebration and everybody gets a chance to open one. And it's honestly still probably wouldn't have blasted the price of like the duels or anything, because like you're more likely to open any given blank lace garbage rare than you are a Black Lotus in your pack,
or a Mox or Time Walk or whatever else.
So it's like I feel the way I see it was 30th anniversary was very much a missed opportunity to actually create a celebration that players could engage in. I guess all we can do is hope 35 is better or whatever.
I can't really say it any better than you did. They really missed it. I think it was, it's to some people it was a slap in the face. To other people it was just a combo, really.
Yeah. Yep.
And and like I've said to many people, I said I still love this game, despite what the corporatization has done to it. And so we can only hope, again, hope in 5 years that they've learned their lesson. We can hope in 2023 that they've maybe learned their lesson and actually have taken something from things like the 40K decks and how good that was. Mm-hmm. Taking things from Kamigawa and showing us how we can take an old plane, make it new again, and make people love it with something new. And then maybe looking at some of our special treatments, gilded foils, like you mentioned, gilded textured foils. Let's try that next with a little bit of galaxy glitter on them. I don't care which, but just something cool, because it is. When I opened a textured foil in a collector pack of Double Masters 22, I was like, oh, that is just awesome. And believe it or not, I opened a foil etched Imperial Seal and a textured Liliana, the Last Hope, in the same pack.
Wow, the God pack.
Yeah, it was amazing. And we were just talking about how Tim had bought a box and he had opened a super good pack. We're like, how can it be better than that? And then later on the night, I opened one of those. I'm like, well, this is how.
That's the way. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The way I do want to kind of end on a slightly more positive note, because I think ultimately this was a year that was full of, unfortunately, missteps. About every quarter there was some kind of misstep happening.
Yeah. Yep.
On the other hand, they're from a particular perspective, right? The perspective you can take here is that, like, who is releasing as much stuff as Magic? The more stuff you release, the more stuff isn't going to quite hit. And that goes for a number of reasons. One is just because the law of numbers, right?
It's just statistics. Yeah.
Yep. The other hand is like the more the more different stuff you're kind of putting your effort into, the harder it is to really nail there are other games that release fewer things and well, they actually have misses too, but some of their, they just are able to kind of focus in on not miss on something sometimes, instead of kind of being, it's almost like a shotgun approach. It's like, well, some of these are going to hit, some of them aren't. It's going to be up to you whether or not you appreciate the shotgun approach. Because I think the shotgun approach gives us, it gives us some things that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. If Magic were continuing the same road that it continued back from all the way back in Zendikar era and stuff, where we were talking earlier is the height of competitive play and everything. Would we have Jumpstart right now, which we think is a great entry point? Would we have 40K decks? Would we have Commander Legends sets that are producing cards that we enjoy for that format and everything, even if they might have been a slightly underpowered set overall. Like, I don't think so. It's a company they're a company that try a lot of things, for better or worse, right?
Yeah, that's an excellent perspective, and yeah, you've really kind of made me think a number of your comments, and especially that is like, yeah, they really, a lot of things they really missed the boat. But again, like you're saying, you got to look at it as a whole. Nobody releases as much stuff as they do for Magic, and so just by the law of statistics, some of those are going to miss, but some of them are going to hit like they have. So I think having a perspective like that, loving this game, I think is a way to continue on. And so, yeah, I really appreciate the perspective, Dan.
Yeah, of course. And I do love Magic, right? Like this, if you listen to this whole podcast, like, man, they really hate Magic. That's not true. I played Arena this morning, and I played Arena this afternoon, actually, like 2 different times. I was jamming some historic Brawl games and having a great time. I'm constantly tweaking Commander decks. I'm trying to make it out to Commander nights when I'm busy a lot of time, but I try to make it out when I have time. I love playing the game. Is it the game that I currently go for competitive 1v1 play? When it's not at my computer, no. It isn't. And that's because of everything we were talking about earlier. I think Wizards does need to, there are things that they do need to shore up. I'm not going to excuse them by saying it's a shotgun approach, right? That's not like an excuse for them. It's like, well, you know what? They're trying, it's like,
right.
I think they could try a little harder in a few areas. Yeah. But I will say that I think, if I can just hope that, like you were saying, some of the events of the year will wake up some people at certain levels and sort of allow things to happen that will continue to shore up some of the weaknesses. We all want to see a game where the strengths are the average, right? Where it's like I'm feeling like every side release is as enjoyable as Double Masters, but as efficiently priced as, like 40K or something. Right. And the competitive play is the top of the line, and there aren't other games that are just straight up doing it better because Magic has more money to spend than them. So it's just weird that it's just frankly weird that Magic isn't as competitive in that arena specifically.
Yeah.
And if I think 2022 can show us that, like, there are things that they can do well, and if they can focus on those and shore up the things that aren't, then we'll be looking at a brightening future as well. If you've been feeling dim at all from 2022.
Yeah, and again, just coming back to focus on those good things, Kamigawa. Double Masters 2022, despite the price, and 40K those are all home runs. And yeah, I think if they can take something like constructive criticism, then yes, and maybe shore up some of their printing problems, because that's another whole discussion.
Yeah, I didn't talk about that at all, but the cards have gotten a bit better. They have. Yep. The Pringling problem is less pronounced, but other games don't have it as bad as Magic still.
Right.
Just that's just facts. Facts.
Even comparing between products, you look at a foil and a collector pack versus a set pack versus a draft pack, and you got 3 different versions of the same card that are supposed to be the same.
A lot of that issue is it's they have to go through multiple different printers to get enough product printed. I've mentioned this before slightly too. There are a number of pitfalls that come with your game being the largest game. Yes. As well. It's, and, but again, I don't use it as an excuse. It's like they should have the resources. They should be able to figure it out. So I, hold the feet to the fire a little bit, like, well, okay, that's what we need to see. But it's all out of love for, this game that we started playing back when Revise came out for you, when that beautiful Thorn Elemental was on that CD-ROM for me. When I had Vizardrix versus trained org. Oh man,
Wizardrix and Kezardrix, I remember them. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And you know, Magic. I always told this to people too when I worked at the shop. You don't quit Magic. Nobody I ever talked to quit Magic. Everyone I ever talked to they came in, they sold their collection. They say, "Well, I'm getting out." Like, okay, I'm gonna just let you know. Nobody ever quits Magic. Are you sure you want to? Like, yep, I want to. Didn't take long. A few years later, even sometimes a few years, whatever, they come back like, yeah, I was thinking about getting back in. I knew I'd see you again.
Yeah, and I, even after that fateful day of Commander Legends, I brought back a couple of my old friends, and they're back in play. Well, I brought Tim back. I brought Jared, and I brought Dane, all guys that I taught back to play back when we were in high school. They're all back in it. So
there's I mean, like, pun intended, I guess, but there's a magic to it, right? It's there's the original game. The mechanics are just they're just timeless at this point. Sort of, it's like as much as we appreciate other games trying to like innovate on some of the concepts, when it comes down to it, it's Magic is got that magical je ne sais quoi that we all kind of end up coming back to toy around with at different points in our lives. And it's the one game where you can trust that whenever you're ready to play a TCG again, it's going to be there for you.
And that's good. That's definitely a good thing. And there've been articles on that. I remember there was an article, I think it was in Wall Street Journal or maybe in Forbes, and they were talking, and this was back 10 years ago when Magic was hitting their 20th anniversary. They're going, how have you been able to keep this game going so long when we have these other games that can't do it? That these, other than the fact that, because I can't remember when Hasbro bought Wizards of the Coast. But, just seeing what Magic did to Wizards of the Coast to the point where they ended up buying TSR and Dungeons and Dragons, and became this nerd juggernaut.
Yeah.
It's in competitive play, was a big thing that has kept the game going. So that bringing that up earlier in our conversation is definitely something that where I think they've taken some missteps, but hopefully we can see an improvement on that in the upcoming years. So
we do see some improvements happening. So yeah, I'm optimistic. I mean, I do think that eventually they're going to. I mean, I think for better or worse, all these other TCGs are lighting a fire under their butts a little bit, and like they're seeing the success of Flesh and Blood is a game with a similar sort of like Western style fantasy theming that Magic has, and they're doing pro, literally just call them pro tours. They're like, whatever, we're just gonna like steal the same structure that you guys stopped using. Like, hey, it's like, are you guys still using that? We're gonna borrow that for a little bit then if you're not. And yeah, hopefully Magic like feels a little bit of that pressure coming from some of these other card games, and they go, well, let's step it back up. Let's set the bar again.
Yeah, no, I agree. This has been a good journey tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dana. I can't believe how long we've talked about this. I mean, I was afraid. I knew the Magic one would go long because there was just like there's just Magic is so much to talk about. Whereas like the My Hero one, we had two sets to talk about for My Hero, and that was it. Magic, we had what 3, 4, 5, 6, like 8, 9 different products to go through, and then
in 1 year,
and then a million other like side things. So like, there was so much to talk about. I do appreciate your patience so much, Dana, and man, like I hope you guys like maybe you split this up over a whole bunch of like commutes or something, but I hope you did enjoy listening to us kind of just ramble on about Magic for almost 3 hours here today.
Yeah, it's this has been enlightening. Just getting your perspective. I mean, coming from a guy who I used to see your smiling face at Paradox pretty regularly, and you were always welcome. It was always a welcome person to talk to about Magic and other things. So
Yeah, I mean, you know me. I'm running a podcast. That means I love to talk. So
yeah. Well, this has been great. This has been absolutely great. So
happy to have had you on today, Dana. Absolutely, anytime. Actually, in fact, there will be another time. I think probably next month I'm going to snag you. We're going to talk a lot about Arena. So if you want to hear that, you guys make sure you come back next month for that episode. But don't miss out, because this was only episode 4 and there are 5 more podcasts releasing this month alone, covering everything that happened in 2022 for all of the biggest trading card games in the market, as well as a wonderful look forward episode at the very end of the year, looking forward to 2023. So a lot more to come for the Maindeck podcast. I hope you guys do stay tuned and follow us, subscribe on YouTube if you need to catch them, or use your podcatcher to catch the pods whenever they come out. They come out late. They usually hit it like a day or 2 later, unfortunately. I haven't figured out how to make that faster. I got to figure that out, but that's when they get on there. So I'm sure you'll catch them there either way. Once again, a real quick shout out to our patrons who make everything we do possible. If you appreciate everything we're bringing to you guys are always welcome. Certainly not required to head to the Patreon link in the description and become a patron to get some cool little perks and some behind the scenes stuff and some we're planning on getting a few extra videos out to the patrons as well very soon. So but otherwise, thank you patrons, and thank you everyone for watching today. Whether or not you are a patron, just being here really makes us smile, and really love hearing all your comments and seeing all the reactions and everything to our videos. So we will catch you guys once again in the next episode of the Maindeck podcast, coming next week very soon. So thank you all for listening. Have a great night.